Cool. Good morning, everybody. Let's try this again. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all. Welcome to day 2 of the Gun Rights Policy Conference. I hope yesterday you found to be very informative. Hopefully you learned a few things, are a little more empowered and ready to defend our Second Amendment rights across the country. We are going to start today by introducing today's MC. It is Charlie. If Charlie would come to the stage. Now, you may know Charlie Cook from Riding Shotgun with Charlie. What Charlie likes to do is capture people in his car and drive around in circles and talk to them while interviewing them and capture it all on film. So Charlie will be today's host, and we look forward to hearing from you today. Let's just get into it. Charlie?
All right, thank you all very much. It is great to be here Sunday morning at the 39th Annual Gun Rights Policy Conference. Welcome. Glad to see everyone made it. Most people look awake. The extra hour was nice, wasn't it? Absolutely, absolutely. I do want to say that on the back of your name badge is a QR code, and the QR code has the bios of all of the speakers we had yesterday and for today. So if you want to find out more about each of the speakers, you can certainly look there, put that on your smartphone, pull it up. It'll take you right to the saf.org website, and it has all the speakers and their bios on there. The other thing is, if you are a local person and you ended up driving here, please make sure you go to the registration desk and get a green card, because I think that is going to take care of your parking. And I don't have to make any announcement about somebody left their lights on, so that is good news as well. I am Charlie Cook. I do have a YouTube channel called Riding Shotgun with Charlie, and I drive folks around and interview them in the car, very much like carpool karaoke. And I'm excited to be here today because I was looking at the list of the speakers, and I've had about half the speakers in the car. So it feels less like work and more like, hey, we're just getting together with our friends and hanging out and talking and everything. So I do that. I also have another YouTube channel where I play the trumpet. I put my two passions together, and I play the trumpet with one hand and shoot a gun with the other. And I call those gun grams. I've got about 300 on YouTube, and they've been watched millions of times all over the world. If anyone knows someone who's stationed on Antarctica, that's the only continent somebody hasn't watched one of those on, and I'm trying to get a video of someone in a parka saying, hey, my name is Joe, I'm on Antarctica, I'm watching one of Charlie's gun grams, and I would love to have video of this so that I can tell my kids that I am Mr. Worldwide, and people all over the world have watched my videos. So, I like to tell folks I want to bring fun ownership to gun ownership is kind of what it comes down to. So I'm really looking forward to today. Today we have a lot of great speakers, and we have one that's, they'll be okay. See, the nice thing about leaving it vague like that is I got 3 people that are like, oh my God, is he talking about me? Oh, I knew I should have practiced more. Anyway, so today's going to be great. Our first speaker this morning is... He's going to be speaking about the evolving political landscape. It is the chairman of the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus, Brian Strasser. Come on up.
All right, good morning. So I have 2 main topics I want to talk about: the landscape in Minnesota and how do we keep defeating gun control in a blue state. But I have to start with the elephant in the room, which is this guy. Our Governor, Tim Walz. And I want to tell you that regardless of what Tim Walz tells you, he is not a friend of gun owners. He is literally the FUD cartoon. We won't talk a lot about Tim Walz today, but Tim Walz is not going to be your friend when it comes to gun rights. I think we all understand that, and we can tell you all about what we've had to do to defeat him in Minnesota. And that too. So the landscape in Minnesota looks like this. Until just a year ago, we had the nation's only divided legislature. In the 2022 elections, the DFL, what we call the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, because we're a little strange in Minnesota, that's the Democrats, they took the entire legislature. The House by a handful of seats, the Senate by 1 vote, 1 seat, 1 rule seat by less than 300 votes. And we have a really interesting blend of Democrat in Minnesota. This is my state senator, John Marty, who says we need to register gun owners so that 16-year-olds can't go into a store and buy guns. That's the mentality that we're dealing with. What we saw in the legislative session last year was an attempt to pass every form of gun control known to man. So when you hear, and I know those of you that are local know this from California, they've tried to do everything that has successfully happened in California over the last 20 to 30 years. And you can get a list here of some of the things that they tried to pass in the last legislative session. We, of course, fought through this with Rob Dorr, who is our head of government relations and was down at the Capitol every day. We also built alliances with Minnesota sheriffs because one of the things they wanted to do was pass a very stringent safe storage law that would have made it impossible to use a firearm for self-defense. Well, our rural sheriffs were not going to stand up for that. And almost every sheriff in the county, except those couple you see down there, came out against that legislation. We also had a county attorney in the metro, Brad Johnson in Anoka County, write a 10-page analysis of the bill and send it to the bill author about why he thought it was unconstitutional. By the way, the bill author was a county prosecutor in another county, so we took some perverse pleasure in that. At the end of the session last year, we got down to the last few days, and we had killed everything, and they had pulled universal background checks and the red flag gun confiscation off of the agenda until, of course, the very end of session, where they crammed it into this gigantic omnibus bill and then passed it. Now, they were at least transparent about this, because you'll see in 2024 they were a lot less transparent. So at the end of the day, last year, the Democrats, despite trying everything, got two watered-down bills, a universal background check bill, a red flag gun confiscation bill. But wait, it's not over, because they came back in 2024 and tried to do the whole thing again. Their agenda, though, was a little less aggressive, if you want to say that. They tried a different safe storage bill, mandatory lost and stolen reporting, a binary trigger ban, and they attempted to peel our fairly strong preemption law, and maybe more, we weren't sure. Now, you might remember I said it was a one-vote majority in the Minnesota Senate. In the middle of session, something really weird happened, and that is that DFL State Senator Nicole Mitchell, a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force Reserve, got arrested for first-degree burglary, breaking into her stepmother's house 3.5 hours away at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, Senator Mitchell not only sat in the county jail for a couple days awaiting an initial appearance before she bonded out, she was also a co-author on the safe storage bill. Well, of course she wants gun owners to have to lock up their guns. This is a job hazard for her in her new career as a burglar. So we started putting pressure on Senator Mitchell and the DFL caucus because, again, they got one vote. I only got to peel away one vote to win all of this. So we started arguing, well, Senator Mitchell shouldn't vote. She can't vote on critical public safety legislation. Now, do you think the Democrats cared about that in Minnesota? No, they didn't. But what did happen is we got enough pressure on one of the legislators, the one who wants to run for Congress in 2026, in a rural area, Grant Housechild, who had previously voted for everything else, came out in the last week of session and said, yeah, you know, I'm not going to vote for any of this other gun control stuff. I said last year this is as far as I think I would go. This is as far as I'm going to go. And he killed their entire gun control agenda for 2024, which really upset the Moms Demand Action crowd. This is one of our best fundraising tweets, by the way. Now, what they did do is in the last 20 minutes of session, they took everything the Republicans had filibustered, put it into an 1,800-page bill, suspended the rules on the floor, cut off all debate, refused to recognize any Republican point of order, passed the bill. What they passed was a binary trigger ban, which is somewhere in that pile of 900 printed pages you see here. Now, we're not done with that fight in the courts, but they did pass that and sign it into law. We'll have more to say about that. But we killed everything else: safe storage, a ban on so-called assault weapons, magazine restrictions, and everything else. And that, of course, takes us to, what do you do when you can't control the legislature and you can't stop some gun control from passing, Well, you warm up the lawsuit printer, and you start firing up with your partners at SAF and the Firearms Policy Coalition and other groups, which is what we did. We have a unique issue in Minnesota because we have a taxpayer-funded gun violence prevention clinic at the University of Minnesota Law School who act as special assistant attorneys general and defend Minnesota's gun laws in court, and also help the attorney general sue gun retailers to put them out of business, which is also happening right now. What they have done is they've won a lot of cases in criminal cases defending Minnesota's what gun control laws we do have against Bruin challenges. But to us, these are just tactical wins. We're winning the strategic fight with our partners at SAF and FPC. Last year, we won in federal district court, striking down Minnesota's prohibition on 18 to 20-year-olds from obtaining permits to carry. But our attorney general is Keith Ellison. So he appealed to the United States 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. And if you ever looked at the makeup of the 8th Circuit, that is not a friendly place if you are anti-gun. They argued in St. Paul before a 3-judge panel in February of this year that 18 to 20-year-olds have never been considered part of the people protected by the Second Amendment. Therefore, the plaintiffs can't prove the right is being infringed, which immediately caused one of the judges on the panel to say, so there's no protection for unlawful search and seizure under the Fourth Amendment for an 18-year-old. That's what I heard from you. Well, no, the Second Amendment is different. And you can imagine predictably how the rest of that argument proceeded. So they lost 3-0. The Minnesota main newspaper is the Star Tribune, based in Minneapolis. We don't get along with their editorial board. They wrote an editorial the next day. Well, isn't it better to have this rule? We should not allow 18 to 20-year-old young adults to carry. So we fire back with an editorial saying, no, you're wrong. You have to protect the Second Amendment or your constitutional rights for young adults don't mean anything. And we reminded them the right approach here would be that the state should just save further legal fees and take the loss. Because otherwise, we're going to continue to sue them and beat Keith Ellison and the legislature in court. And as our t-shirt here says, we have a pretty good record. It's 2-0 so far. We're also happy to work with other partners. Our friends at Knife Rights just this past week sued over Minnesota's switchblade law. We helped them identify the plaintiffs for that case and local counsel. And we've been working more with partners like the California Rifle and Pistol Association and the Second Amendment Law Center and filing amicus briefs in cases where we think there will be good precedent, particularly Snope v. Brown, around the constitutionality of Maryland's assault weapons bans. So how do we keep doing this in a blue state? Well, here are a few things that have worked for us that I hope you can take away. The first is that we work to communicate authentically and without sensationalism. Now, we get a little snipey on Twitter. That's the place where you can get snipey with people, and that's cool. But when we tell our members about bills, we're pretty honest about what the bills say, who's sponsoring them, what's happening, and what the likelihood is of them passing. And we're very transparent about our testimony, what we're saying, what our written testimony is, and how they can participate. And we try to do this on as many channels as we can. Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, email, Reddit, and Discord are all places that we're regularly communicating. And I had to ask my teenage daughters what this meant because I didn't quite get it. But one of our testimonials recently was, you and Rob seem like normal people, not weirdo edgelords. I didn't know what an edgelord was. My 13-year-old had to educate me. We've worked really hard to make ourselves available to the media. The media is not always your friend. Editorial board at the Star Tribune is certainly not our friend. But we have worked hard to make sure that first the news media is accurately reporting on firearms laws and the use of firearms, to the point that now news editors call us to look at a story to make sure the facts are right, which over time has helped us get better coverage, like this story from quite a few years ago at a hearing. But we got front page coverage about our strength at a legislative hearing when we didn't even control the legislative makeup. We've also worked more to leverage video to expand our audience. Our communications director, who previously worked in the House Republican caucus in Minnesota, does a really good job of grabbing video immediately from legislative hearings and floor arguments and putting that out on social media so that our members who might not want to watch a 3-hour debate or a 2-hour legislative hearing can see the highlights from our side but also the absolutely dumb stuff the other side says, which of course gets more viral coverage. We've worked to make animated explainer videos that we've shared on YouTube about how Minnesota's laws work around how to get a permit to carry and things like that. And even shorts, and I apologize for the goofy faces, you don't get to control what goes up here. But 60-second videos have actually performed really well for us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and soon we're gonna do this on TikTok, to the point that we had 7,100 hours of views of just shorts in the last year, and reached hundreds of thousands of people that we didn't reach before we started doing this. So I'd encourage you to think about ways to do that. We've even leveraged video and social media to raise tens of thousands of dollars just through posts that link out to our fundraising. Even goofy memes like this one, there's a story behind the gunny badger I'll have to explain after this. Even memes like this, or one of my favorite ones here with, do you have any history of mental illness in your family? Well, I have an uncle who thinks gun laws prevent crime. Or this one poking at the Minnesota Law School's clinic, take the loss in worth or appeal to the Supreme Court and get nationwide precedent established. Which one do you choose? We get a lot of donations from these, which is surprising to us, but has worked really well as a way of raising money. We've also focused hard on just remaining single issue and nonpartisan. I don't care if we piss off the Republicans or the Democrats or the Libertarians, as long as we stick to our principles. Our mission has always been very clear. We are about the right to keep and bear arms, and that's it. We don't get involved in anything else around that. And that even means when a young African-American male is killed in a no-knock warrant in Minneapolis because they snuck into the apartment where he was staying, and he was not the target of the warrant, just to be clear. He had a permit to carry. He did what any of us would have done. He reached for his means of self-defense, and the police killed him. That was wrong. The no-knock warrant was wrong, this approach was wrong, and this man deserves the full extent of his constitutional rights, the same as all of us here in the room. Our allies didn't like that, but that was the right thing to do. And then we've worked to build relationships with non-traditional allies by making sure that we're finding common ground, which is how we got the Minnesota ACLU to come out against gun control laws in Minnesota and testified as such before the legislature. It's how we got funding for a research center at Hamline University that does fact-based research into violence involving firearms and other issues, to the point that Rob will be on one of their panels coming up here at a conference with anti-gun folks, which is going to be really upsetting to them. And it also allows us to think about when our lieutenant governor, who will be our governor if Walz and Kamala Harris win, wears a shirt about protecting trans kids with a knife. Well, why would you use a knife? You should use an AR-15. And again, one of our best-selling shirts here at the caucus. Now, the fight's not over for us. Our House is up for re-election. Polls show a really tight race. It's our chance to flip this and get a pro-gun, a pro-Second Amendment majority back into the Minnesota House. So that's how we've been able to keep winning in a blue state. We're going to keep fighting, and we're not going to have any boating accidents along the way. Thank you.
All right. All right, thank you, Brian. That was fabulous. Obviously, these guys spend a lot of time making memes while they're ice fishing, right? It's effective, it works, ain't nothing wrong with that. Our next speaker that we're going to be bringing up is going to be speaking about the international relations, the importance of the presence on the world stage. The Vice President of International Outreach of SAF, Julianne Versnell. Did you want the handheld?
No, I'm covering my...
Need your other?
Okay. My apologies. I can't see anything. I really can't see anything. I have 3 pairs of glasses up here with me. I have my contacts in, and I can't see anything. So when I sat down at the table, I could read, however, the big thing that said to remove your badge. But I'm going to put my badge on, okay? And then I'm going to put The rest of my badge is on. Okay? So this will give you some idea of things that I've been doing. I've been working on the international, in the international arena for 17 years. And things have changed a lot over that point. I used to be able to read then, too. I can't even, oh God, this is awful. Oh, okay. I have spoken at the UN numerous times. And I am going to ask Alan to come up here and read one of those speeches because I simply can't. Since I came down to San Diego, since Friday, I've had trouble seeing anything, and this morning, unfortunately, is the absolute worst. So, Alan, can I have you read this, please? This was a statement that was made before the first committee, which is a really flickin' big deal.
Happy to do this for you, Julianne. I'm sorry about your eyes today, but this is Julianne's statement to the first committee meeting of the United Nations in Geneva, right? Correct? No.
The first committee meeting
Zurich.
takes place in New York City.
New York City. This is the Second Amendment Foundation statement she made. I'm Julianne Versnell of the Second Amendment Foundation. I would like to address the topic of violence against women and the natural right of self-defense. Mr. Chairman, more women are living in isolation because of societal ostracizations caused by physical and mental disfigurements inflicted by men each year than are murdered with small arms. The acid burn victims in India, the women raped by armed gangs in Mexico, and the mutilated and, do not forget, murdered victims of honor violence that occurs even in Europe and the Americas and Australia are examples of these unspeakable crimes. Gender violence often is perpetrated by male familial members who do so with immunity and impunity, and in many instances with governments turning a blind eye, condoning or even endorsing it. Mr. Chairman, the United Nations recognizes the right of governments to defend themselves and to possess the means to do so. Yet, this body perpetuates the situation that keeps the number of women victims growing by denying them, and in fact all human beings, the means to decrying even their right to defend themselves. They are the victims not of small arms, but of political philosophies, state policies, and say only governments are worthy of defending themselves. To argue that people have the right to live but not to defend their lives is to argue in favor of continuing to keep women at risk of violence where government does little to protect them. Mr. Chairman, this body must address the right of women to defend themselves and their right to have the physical means, including small arms, to do so, or acknowledge the hypocrisy inherent in proclaiming support for women's causes while keeping them vulnerable to male-perpetuated violence. Thank you.
Violence against women has been critically important to me for years because women are so disenfranchised, not in the United States, but really in the United States too. When you look at what goes on in Chicago and New York and Los Angeles and San Francisco, women are constantly brutalized and victimized. And in the rest of the world, it's appalling. It is absolutely appalling. When I talk about the gender violence and the gender mutilation and all those things, they are true. And the statistics for each year, because this statement was made 10 years ago, they don't change. They just absolutely get worse. This is Geneva. Where all those flags are that are supposedly flying there for freedom. So this past August, I was at the 10th anniversary, now I go back, I'm sorry, at the 10th anniversary of, believe me, they have money for a cake, but they don't have money for anything else. They're always begging. This will tell you the amount of people who are cooperating with the treaty, but mostly there's two things there. We need money, and we need money, and we need money so that we can do this. The next slide, there's a new tact that's going on at the United Nations, and it's really coming with very, very, very organized support. How many of you in here know about George Soros? I'm sure you're all raising your hands, but I can't see. Well, you ain't seen nothing yet. Alex Soros makes him look like a piker, and this is one of Alex Soros's big issues, really, really big issues. The way the things work at UN are very strange. Everybody find them very strange. But we have the president of the ATT, Conference of State Parties, which is the group of people who signed it. And remember that the United States signed the treaty, but it has never been ratified. We have never bought into it. And unless the administration changes drastically, we're never going to buy into it. Now, the reason that we have not unsigned the treaty is because there is no way to do so. After spending a good 10 years working on all of the details of the treaty, we seem to have missed how for people to unsign. So this past August, which is 10 years after those previous remarks, I'm going to ask Alan to come up here and read this for me. There's some bizarre protocol that you have to follow, which is why I'm talking about the recent loss to their UN family, but I'm going to let Alan do it.
So these are Julianne's remarks this summer. Okay. Mr. President, thank you for your dedication on this 10th anniversary of the ratification of the ATT. I would also like to offer sincere condolences on behalf of the Second Amendment Foundation on the loss of two vital members of the family of the United Nations. Mr. President, I'm not here to talk about this U.S. Second Amendment. I am here to address the universal natural right to defend oneself. There has been much discussion about protecting the lives of women and children. Let's not forget that the right to life must include the fundamental right to protect and defend that life. As women, we must have the right to protect ourselves and our children, to protect ourselves against assault and rape. No one questions that violence against women is epidemic. Without a means to defend oneself, the protection of oneself, there is no equality against gender-based force. Most of the delegates here know that in the U.S. there is extensive firearms ownership. What you may not know is that today almost half of the handguns in the U.S. are owned by women. They are used daily for self-defense. As the number of women carrying firearms for self-defense has increased, violent crime has decreased. According to The Trace, investigating gun violence in the U.S., the increase in gun ownership by women has translated to a 12.3% drop in gun violence. Eleanor Roosevelt was a staunch supporter of the United Nations and the first U.S. ambassador to the organization. She was known and revered for her beliefs in both civil rights and women's rights, including the right to defend oneself if necessary. Mrs. Roosevelt drove through the American South by herself to promote civil rights. The Secret Service begged her not to go as there was a bounty on her head. She went anyway, without Secret Service protection, but on her seat of her car was her .38 caliber revolver. We can learn from Mrs. Roosevelt. No one supported the UN more than she did, and at the same time, she insisted on her right as a woman and as a person to have the means to defend herself. We urge this body to recognize the tangible results of the natural right of self-protection and the proven resulting reduction of gender-based violence.
Okay. I really have to apologize because I had things in great order with the PowerPoint, and believe me, not being able to see has come as a big surprise to me because now I can't see the clicker. Nope, don't talk into the, which, I don't know which mic. Okay. All right, okay. I want everyone to read the highlighted paragraph here because it is just came out of the ATT in August. This is a new method that is being used. You will see the initials GBV in it. Does everybody see that? Gender-based violence. Okay, and then it talks about women and children. I'd like to let you know that this comment, which is now part of the amended ATT treaty, was introduced by the state of Palestine. I didn't know Palestine was a state, but it seems that they've been invading so many areas of the UN that isn't funny. It's Palestine was back and forth against Israel, but then China was back and forth against Russia. So they get to fight their little battles there. The other thing that what happens at the wonderful cake that somebody made, and there is from our vantage point, which is where I would have shown something about the remarks. I can't apologize enough, and please cut this out of the video. This is a very, very old photo in Vienna. I was trying to find some old photos to make sure that you got a sense of how many things there are. There's a Conference of State Parties. There's the Program of Action. There is the Committee to stop the interstate of travel of weapons so that it can stop crime. This is me along with two gentlemen from FACE, which is a very, very, very important organization in Europe that protects hunting and strongly, strongly supports lead, which is becoming an issue over here, as you're well aware, and it is an issue in Europe. So what happens in Europe does not necessarily mean that it doesn't happen somewhere else. I'm so embarrassed by this. I have been writing a book for the last 10 years, and the only thing that I've finished on it that's final is the acknowledgement. So I'd like to have Alan come up here and read them for me because I can't, but they're from my heart. So I'm going to ask Alan. As you can see, this is a finalized page for print, but I'm going to ask Alan to read this because without you all, none of this would happen. I'd also like you to know that our international work is paid for by a special grant. However, if you'd like to contribute to it, please feel free to do so. So, Alan, I'm going to let you read the acknowledgments.
Well, even with my glasses, I'm having a hard time with on this one. To the staff and Board of Trustees of the Second Amendment Foundation for the years of dedication, it is an honor to work with you. To my colleagues both in the United States and internationally for the wealth of knowledge you have shared, please know that you have my respect. To the extraordinary scholars and lawyers who have brought the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms into debate on civil rights where it truly belongs, I'm continually awed and inspired. To the survivors of the Versnell Death March who have patiently and carefully taught me so much about this process, you have my sincere thanks, and without you, there would be no book. To SMG, AMG, and AMG2 for their patience in trying to keep track of where I am, I love being your mom. To my husband, Alan Merrill Gottlieb, who has always encouraged me, we have won some major battles together throughout the war continues. And to all the stalwart women and men who violently defend and promote the civil right to keep and bear arms, I salute you.
I thank you. I thank you very much. I am out of time, and having been known as the time Nazi, I am not going to put Charlie into that position. Thank you very much. If you'd like some more details, I would be very, very happy to talk to you. Thank you very much.
All right. I'll take this. Let me get your glasses.
Oh, I have multiple pairs.
I only have 3 pair up here.
I only have 3 pairs. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Thank you. You have no idea. I've been sweating it out. I'm like, is she going to go over? I don't have any bracelets on. I know, this is good. All right, well, thank you very much. Our next speaker did a fantastic presentation at the Alternative Multimedia Conference on Friday. Today, he's going to be talking about the Investigative Journalism Project, Uncovering the Ugly Truth. He's chief editor of SAF's Investigative Journalism, the gun writer, Lee Williams.
For those of you who don't know me, I too was raised a middle-class child. And I love my yard, so did my dad. No, my name's Lee. My journey here began in 2009. I was the investigative reporter at the Sarasota Herald Tribune in Sarasota, Florida, where I still live. I was called into the office of our executive editor, a guy named Bill Church, who kind of reminds me a lot of Alan. A forward thinker. Bill said he wanted certain reporters to start writing about their passion topics, and my passion's always been guns. I don't ever remember not shooting. I was a journalist for 20 years. Before I became a journalist, I was a police officer. Before I was a police officer, I served in the Army. The first words I ever wrote as a gun writer were, "If you cut me, I will bleed Hoppies number 9. So for 10 years, we had The Gun Writer, which was the only pro-gun blog sponsored by a daily newspaper, and I had fun, man. And then my newspaper was purchased by Gannett, and everything changed. Gannett is owner of USA Today, and they're not the most, well, they are incredibly progressive, but not in the good way. So when they found out they had a then editor in Sarasota writing pro-gun stories, shortly thereafter they got rid of me and they got rid of my boss. About that time, and now we're talking April 2021, I get a call from my buddy Mark Walters, who was emceeing yesterday, and he said, "Hey, Alan Gottlieb is going to give you a call. Take the damn call." So I did, and Alan asked me to be the investigative reporter for SAF, and we've been rocking and rolling ever since. We've written 350 stories so far, and I just want to highlight a couple of them. My second favorite story involves stolen valor. We were contacted by the Guardians of the Green Beret. Does anybody know who they are? They're a hell of a group, retired Green Berets, retired Special Forces sergeants, and all they do is they monitor fakes and frauds who like to say they earned the Green Beret, and unfortunately they're really busy. Well, that story involved a guy with DoD contacts who was selling very expensive sniper platforms to the DoD, playing upon the fact that he had been in Special Forces. He had not. And we exposed him, and unfortunately, he lost a bit of contracts. Another story, the one I would say that blew up the most in not a good way, we hammered the hell out of the Gun Violence Archive, which is a group that kind of makes up their own mass shooting stats. Basically, if a gun goes off at a range somewhere, the GVA will call it a mass shooting. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. The number one story, as far as metrics go, that has been read more than anything, we outed the fact that the ATF had increased FFL revocations by 500%. And now, like Mark said yesterday, that's 600%. That story was read on Capitol Hill. We're still very proud of that. The two stories that bugged me the most both involved ATF raids that went bad. Obviously, we did not break this story, but we wrote about the death of Brian Malinowski in Arkansas, the airport executive. They did a no-knock on and walked in and shot him. Terrible. But another similar raid involved a gentleman named Russell Fincher. And Russell's from Oklahoma, and he was a high school teacher, high school coach, and an ordained Baptist minister, and a part-time FFL. He was a true definition of a kitchen table FFL. Would sell guns to friends, had a little shack, literally one of those prefab sheds out behind his home where he sold ammo. Yeah, they hit him with their SWAT team, threw him in handcuffs, threw him down on the ground in front of his 13-year-old kid, and yelled and screamed at him until he voluntarily relinquished his FFL. That was the first time we'd encountered that. But ever since that incident, we were seeing that, yeah, FFLs will be revoked by ATF, but they're also threatening and trying to get these gun dealers, these law-abiding gun dealers, to voluntarily relinquish their FFLs. And that was the first time we'd seen that pattern. My absolute favorite story, and again, you'll probably notice there's a theme here involving the ATF. I want to read the headline. ATF's poorly trained operators are a threat to public safety. And that one really pissed them off because we explored and exposed the fact that these ATF's quote-unquote SWAT team, they have a 2-week course to be a member of their, and then they call themselves operators like they're Delta or DevGru or something. They did not like that, but you know, who cares? It's working? Oh, okay. One of the things I do as a journalist, it's become kind of second nature, is a good journalist will look for trends. Okay, you'll write certain stories and you'll start to see trends. Now, we've had a lot of people up here this weekend talking about lawfare. Okay, they're trying to bankrupt groups like SAF, similar groups, by bringing these bogus lawsuits, or by creating things that we have to defend. So we were looking, where's all this coming from? Write this down. All of it seems to be coming out of the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Do most of you know what that is? That is the office inside the White House that Kamala's in charge of, that's paid for by your taxpayer dollars. We're seeing a lot of similarities into the crap that they're pushing out into the states. She claimed that would be an incubator. Well, it is incubating. I don't really want to tell you what it's incubating. Mass shooting data. There's a lot of database stories are increasing. Now, we hit the Gun Violence Archive hard, so hard that a lot of the media groups stopped using them. And now they're creating their own mass shooting databases. This is becoming a trend. People want to see those numbers. And now everybody and their brother is doing it. We see the Trace doing it. That's the propaganda arm of former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg's gun control empire. They're creating a database. Gannett, my former employer, is creating a database of quote-unquote mass shootings. Even Rand Corporation is creating one. That leads us into the next one. The other team is using these database stories. And why are we seeing so many of these database stories coming out in hell, they got medical journals that are running database stories of mass shootings. Well, because when you have a database, they believe you have credibility. And usually in pure journalism, a database story has a lot more credibility than something a reporter has come up with. Unfortunately, all of these database stories are GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. They make up the stats, the stories are stupid, but we're seeing, Giffords posted one this morning on teen suicides and how teen suicides are soaring, which is why nobody under 21 should have a gun, right? Rand is publishing them. Corporate media just loves picking them up. We're also seeing a trend toward the private anti-gun funding. Has anybody heard of the Arnold Group? Well, if you haven't read my stories, we kind of outed them. It's a billionaire couple from California now. They donated $1.7 million to RAND to do anti-gun studies and then publish anti-gun reports. Well, of course, I talked to the guys at RAND. They're very open, and they said, "Well, you know, it's empirical. Our numbers, you know, we support them. We stand by our work product. But if somebody's paying you a total of 2.5 million and then 1.7 dedicated toward gun control, don't you think those researchers are going to have a little bit of pressure put on them to come up with the numbers that the donors want to see?" I believe it was Mr. Ayub yesterday talked about gun DGUs, defensive gun usages. Those have really fallen off the radar screen of the corporate media. Nobody's reporting those anymore. That's a very unfortunate trend. I'm starting to wonder if there's some type of collusion in there. I know they've never really been a big story, but they're not reporting them at all. So keep an eye on that. If you see some, please email me if somebody has the guts to do it. And then this public health crisis crap. Ever since the Surgeon General just said it's a public health crisis, we're seeing that mimicked in so many stories all across the corporate media. Now, one thing we do once we have the trends is we can make some predictions. And of course, these are all my opinion. But, you know, we saw Biden, let's talk executive orders. Joe Biden has put out 40 anti-gun executive orders. I think if she gets elected, she'll probably do 40 just in her first day. And I hope I'm wrong on several counts there. Now, Joe, and I used to work in Delaware at the News Journal in Wilmington, Delaware. Delaware is a small state. I was investigative reporter there for 5 years. So eventually you run into the Bidens. So I do know Joe, although the thing that I see walking around and shuffling around the White House is definitely not the one I knew. I knew Bo too. I never met Hunter. I saw Hunter in a bar once. He was drunk. But Bo was actually a good guy. Anyway, Joe weaponized the ATF. We're pretty sure if Kamala and Tim get elected, they'll criminalize it, which is even obviously, you know, it took me a while to even wrap my head around that. But keep in mind what Waltz did, like our friends in Minnesota will tell you. He ordered police in Minneapolis to shoot paintballs at people who broke the pandemic curfew and actually went out on their front porch or in their yard. So for him, when he gets in there, he's going to find this ready pool of federal agents who will do whatever he wants. So I'm sure that'll be criminalized. And as far as her and the ARs go, you know, she says she wants that voluntary buyback. I predict she's going to go for full-blown confiscation. If she's able to stack the Supreme Court, we're doomed because they'll find anything that happens to be lawful. We're starting to see a couple of things on body armor. A lot of negative stories are coming out. I'm telling my readers, look, buy guns, buy ammo, and I would try and get some before it's outlawed because I think they're going to be going after body armor next nationally, which is sad. There's only a couple states where it's outlawed now, but I think that's probably going to be on their agendas to criminalize body armor, plates and flexible. The good news is we're seeing a heck of a decline in the corporate media. My former newspaper, when I started there in 2008, we had a Sunday circulation of 160,000. Last Sunday it was 16,000. So nobody's reading, especially any kind of print product anymore. A couple of the main enemies, BuzzFeed and Vice, are going away. Newsweek and Time are still cited like they have any credibility. They don't even have a print product anymore. Cable TV news ratings are dwindling. Everybody's going to X. I mean, look at the statistics that the brother Elon's able to get on his stuff on X. They're in millions. Any of these news channels would kill to have those ratings. And finally, I think the time is ripe. And I said this yesterday during AmCon, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Now is the time for the citizen journalists to step up, because there's a vacuum there. So I would highly advise all of you, we're gonna have more stuff coming out on AmCon. You all have a voice if you have access to social media, if you have access to email, and let your voices be heard, man, because we need it. I need the help. If you wanna have any tips, I have the easiest email in the world to remember. It's lee@saf.org, lee@saf.org. Come see me, I'll give you my cell. You are our eyes and ears out there, and look what the other team has. compared to what we have. They've got CBS, NBC, CNN, MSLSD, and everybody else, and practically every newspaper in the country. And man, we have us. So help me, help you. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much. You can see why we had him speak the other day at AmCon. He's encouraged everyone to get involved, which is fabulous. Our next speaker is going to be talking about the Second Amendment protection of non-firearms. The attorney from the Law Office of Alan Beck and the 2024 Bill of Rights Award winner, Alan Beck.
So today I'm going to be talking about the protection of weapons and other items that are not firearms. When we think of the Second Amendment, we think of rifles, handguns, etc. But both historically and as our jurisprudence has developed, the Second Amendment applies to any number of weapons that you can use to defend yourself. The first modern case to discuss the Second Amendment was United States v. Miller. And in Miller, the court was evaluating the constitutional protection of a short barrel shotgun. In that case, the defendant, it was a criminal case, didn't submit a briefing or show up to court when the case finally made it up to the U.S. Supreme Court. So what the court said is here, because nothing's presented, we can't rule on the Second Amendment protection, but we're going to establish a test, and that's here because it's not within the judicial notice that a short barrel shotgun has a reasonable relationship to the preservation or the efficiency of a well-regulated militia. Now, that was in 1939. Heller comes along and it clarifies what the Supreme Court said in Miller and established that among the militia functions is the right to personal self-defense. That's what we think of, when you're defending yourselves against a break-in or robbery. And it did an excellent historical analysis of what the term arm meant around the time of the founding, at the ratification of the Second Amendment. And it used a number of dictionaries from that time to make that, define that term. And it cited to, notably, Timothy Cunningham's 1771 dictionary, and defined arms as anything that a man wears for his defense, or takes into his hands, uses in wrath to strike another. And what we know from that is that the term arm applies to anything that you can bear upon your person to defend yourself, or anything you can wear upon your person to protect yourself from attack, so also armor. The term arm refers to both weapons that you can use and armor that you can carry upon your person. So, unfortunately, from that definition, things like, say, cannons might be out of the question, but based upon Heller's definition of an arm, there's all sorts of weapons that are protected. Now, I'll go into my litigation really quickly. I got the idea, probably back around 2011, which was my first Second Amendment case. We started thinking about the idea of what weapons are protected other than firearms. And, I worked on this for a couple of years. Eugene Volokh was a professor at UCLA, had done a good deal of research. And, after we did one case on the issue, and the court avoided the constitutionality, and we took another shot after the Saitano opinion. In 2016, the Supreme Court ruled on a litigant criminal defense case of a woman who was in a parking lot, and the police found her with a stun gun. she went up to the court, and initially the trial court upheld the conviction. It ultimately went up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the court, the record was pretty established. This woman had kept a stun gun because she had an abusive boyfriend, and she needed this. She was homeless, and she needed this to protect herself. And the Supreme Court said, this is, the lower courts have gotten this wrong. We're not going to expressly find this stun gun is protected, but here's the test. We're going to reiterate the test. You have to figure out, is this a bearable weapon that you can use in a self-defense situation? And after that, myself, my co-counsel in a number of these cases, Stephen Stambolia, who we filed a number of taser cases across the country, and we were able to overturn the bans in Rhode Island, New York, New Jersey, and Hawaii, and about half a dozen cities across the country. And a friend of mine, George Lyon, took out the District of Columbia statute. So after that, we decided that we were going to file some more lawsuits, because Heller very clearly uses a knife as an example of an arm. So we thought the next great case is going to be on the issue of knives. And at that time, we were already seeing some of the great work Doug Ritter had done on the legislative side, trying to get rid of the bans. But the truth is, there's a few really die-hard gun control anti-Second Amendment states out there. We already know we're in one right now. And, I work mostly in Hawaii, and we knew that the odds of the legislature doing anything in a couple of those states just to be slim to none. So we filed a lawsuit on the constitutionality of a butterfly knife. Now, a lot of you may be wondering, what is a butterfly knife? A butterfly knife is a traditional Filipino martial arts knife that has two handles. At the time, there wasn't spring technology, so the Filipinos decided to have a second knife to make the knife safer to own. Because of that, it's a crime. Simply because a knife has a second handle, you can go to jail for having it. And in Hawaii, that's a quarter of the population has some type of Filipino ancestry. So this was a law that was put into place because they didn't like Filipino workers coming over and be able to have their traditional weapons. Because, due to the history of Hawaii, a lot of the plantation owners need to bring in workers. And they didn't like the idea of the plantation workers having access to weapons. So they banned both Filipino weapons and a lot of the native Hawaiian weapons. And, that always didn't sit right with me. So we brought a lawsuit on that. Actually, we won from a 3-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit. The state of Hawaii was concerned that we might, this case would set bad precedent for the AR-15 bans and a variety of the other litigations happening right now. So not only do they get rid of their butterfly knife ban in an effort to moot the case, they've also gotten rid of all their weapons bans that don't deal with firearms. So right now, one of my clients, I should have gotten a slideshow, because my clients walks around every night with a halberd as a 16th century battle axe. And he's been walking around Waikiki with that thing. Come after me afterwards. I'll show you some photos. We're having a lot of fun with this. And, I actually flew, I live in San Diego, so I fly out there quite a bit. And, we had a rally. We brought katanas. We brought Scottish claymores, halberds, you name it. And, man, a lot of tourists were wondering what the heck is happening in Hawaii. We did not see this on the brochure. So, So that's what I've been doing. We've got ourselves, I've got litigation here in California, and on the issue of batons. A lot of you may know Judge Benitez, who has been known by many in the Second Amendment community as Saint Benitez. And, in California, it is a crime to have a baseball bat in your back seat. of your car. It is actually, you can be charged with a felony over that because they have a billy club ban, which originally meant to, it's a billy club, police have them, ASP. Well, that law is actually being interpreted to refer to any club whatsoever. I have a friend, he's a criminal defense attorney up in the Bay Area. Guy comes in, police show up for a noise violation, and to make a long story short, the guy has the piñata stick. He's a Hispanic fellow. There's, it's a, they're having a party. They have a piñata. Guy, through a confluence of events, guy got charged with possession of a billy club, even though he wasn't engaged in any sort of hostile activity, because he was drunk trying to hit a piñata, right? And, my friend's a criminal defense attorney, he was just like, well, you need the felony, or you can, you can try and fight the felony, or I can plead you out to a pretty light sentence. Well, the point is, the guy was turned into a criminal over a piñata stick. That's how crazy this law is in California. And thankfully, Judge Benitez saw it our way, and we prevailed on that. That case up on appeal November 6th. I'm going to be arguing in front of the Ninth Circuit. And I want to go through a few other things while I still have time. Right now, let me tell you about some of the current litigation that's happening. I've talked to you about some of mine. There is a case, like I said, the term arm refers to both weapons that you can attack a person or defend yourself with a person, engage offensively, and what you can put on your body to defend yourself from attack, i.e. body armor. So to my knowledge, the first modern body armor case was filed against New York's ban on body armor early this year. And that's very early in the stages of the litigation. So I'm very hopeful that the judge will simply read Heller and read the text. But that doesn't always happen. So I'm looking forward to see what happens in that case. And my good friends over at Knife Rights, Doug, can you raise your hand if you're still here? Oh, there you are. He is, Doug, like I said earlier, he's done a fantastic job. He filed an amicus brief in my butterfly knife, and he's overturned, I want to say 18 states, but I could be wrong, the bans on switchblades through the legislature. And recently, after Bruin, he decided he was going to take a part in litigation. So he's filed, to my knowledge, 2 cases against the remaining state laws, and then one lawsuit against the federal ban that deals with commerce in switchblades. And interestingly enough, for whatever reason, if you're a Native American living on a reservation, you cannot own a switchblade on Native American land, or if you live in Puerto Rico, one of the other territories. So I don't know, maybe there's an equal protection claim there as well. But so that's what's going on right now in terms of current litigation. There's a few other things out there that, this has been my little baby. I'm, 12 years ago, no one, a lot of people didn't even think this applied to non-firearm weapons. And, I've been thinking that if not me, then maybe somebody else will consider looking at New York's ban on pepper spray. In New York, all pepper spray has to be watered down compared to the rest of the country. I want to say it's 3.2 cannabinoids, which probably doesn't make sense to anyone. But anyway, so everyone in the pepper spray industry has to make a special watered down blend of pepper spray just to sell in New York. Now, that just doesn't make sense. Beyond anything else, something I've been trying to stress with these non-firearm lawsuits is this makes bad public policy. We all know, because of Heller, you have a right to own a handgun, defend yourself, and use lethal force against an assailant. So why do we have restrictions on pepper spray, on tasers, on batons, on certain cultural knives. It's just bad public policy that was put in place before the courts recognized the Second Amendment, and quite frankly, because people have inherent fears of things they don't understand. You know, they saw some bad movies in the 1950s that, Benny and the Jets, right? And they thought, heck, let's ban it because we're the government and we can, and we don't like how this looks. And that doesn't make sense. I'm hoping that we, as Bruin continues to be litigated, and my friends in the legislature continue to do their work, lobbying, that we can get rid of a lot of these laws just simply don't make any sense, because to conclude, Heller and Bruin make it very clear that all bearable arms are protected, not just firearms. So with that, that's my presentation. Now Doug Ritter at Knife Rights has a special treat for all of us, and he's going to come up here and let everyone know a little bit more about Knife Rights and his little treat. So thank you very much for your time. My name is Alan Beck, Law Office Alan Beck.
All right, thank you, Alan.
So, there you go.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, guys. I'm just going to give away some California legal switchblades because, as many of you know, we are suing the state of California so that you can own a switchblade that is more than inch and 0.95 long. But I have some inch and 0.95 switchblades to give away, and we're going to do it right now. First one goes to Ken Van Tessel. Are you here?
All right.
Okay, meet me out at the table. Second goes to Gail Boyd. Is she here?
All right, congratulations, Gail.
Yeah. Meet me out at the table. And, okay, they got to be legible. If I can't read them, sorry, whoever
mine.
you were. And we have Mahina M. A Mahina M here? Okay, well, we will contact her by phone or email. Thanks, guys, for all your support over the years. Remember, what knives matter? All knives matter. Thank you very much.
All right, nice job. Thank you, sir. All right, if you are one of the winners that got a knife and you are going to be flying home, please make sure that you put it in your checked luggage. And to piggyback on Alan's speech there, if you do carry, now I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on YouTube, but if you do carry a baseball bat in your car, you know what you should also carry? A glove and a ball. You got it. All right, our next speaker is going to talk about why voting matters. She is the only female Second Amendment nationally syndicated radio show host. She is a member of the NRA Board of Directors. She is a member in the Women for Gun Rights. She's the director of the Southwest region. What else? She's the author of a book on concealed carry fashion shows. She is in Writing Shotgun with Charlie, episode 9 and 180, one of my closest friends, Amanda Suffolk. Yeah, you got this. Mwah.
Well, how's that for an introduction? So I'm going to talk about voting, but I want to start with telling you that when I was a kid, I wanted to be a fireman. I watched Emergency Squad 51 and watched them run in and was like, I want to be a fireman. And then I grew up a little bit, and then I was like, I want to be a singer. My friend Charlie will tell you that I could not carry a tune if I had a bucket, right? I have no rhythm at all. Nowhere, absolutely nowhere in my plans did I ever say, I want to be a Second Amendment activist. Nowhere. But here I am. Here we are. So how many of you in your career, in your lifetime, as you grew up, said, this is what I want to do, is I want to beat my head against the wall. I want to fight with people who want to hurt me. I want to have people try to strip me from the Constitution. That I want to just go in and be frustrated day after day after day and gain little bits of steps. How many of you guys wanted to do that? Okay, I see one crazy person in row one. But we're going to talk a little bit about voting. And so Jared last night talked about voting, and I want to carry that on. So here's the thing. I'm an engineer by trade. Nowhere did I really want to get involved in politics, nor did I really want to get involved in fighting for the Second Amendment. But things just happened, and what I realized is I am someone who fixes things when they're broken. And so I saw opportunities, and that's kind of where it was. So one day, Kent State University is in my neighborhood in Ohio. So you all know May 4th, 1970, right? Well, they started to try to fight with Ohio's preemption and add anti-Second Amendment regulations in my county, and I was like, oh no, not on my watch. So I got involved in politics. Not only the list that Charlie made, but I got involved in politics, and so in 2016 I joined the Central Committee. By 2019, I was the chairman of the county party. The crazy part is when you talk to chairmen of parties, you find out that they started as like the young Republicans or the young Democrats, and they worked their way up. What I found out is people with problem-solving skills all of a sudden just kind of fast-track to the top. But because there's this problem in trying to answer what's going on, what does society need, how do we make our politicians responsible to us, how do we make them listen to us? So there's a couple different paths that you can take, and one of them is you can run for politics, you can be a politician, and there's a crazy woman in row number 2, but I'm not sure that there's a lot of the rest of you guys who really want to do that. But there's other things that you can do, and I want to give you some recipes and some formulas. Jared talked about the fact that there's almost 10 million hunters and sportsmen and concealed carry holders who are not registered to vote. That's crazy stuff. So I want to give you a couple steps as to what you can do. First thing I want you to do is I want you to think about and write down 10 of your closest friends that you think are like-minded. Right? So write down their names so that you've got them kind of written down. And then I'm going to give you actions to do with them. So the first one would be go to the county voter rolls and see if they are registered to vote. If they're registered to vote, then we're going to go down one path. If they're not, give them a voter registration and talk to them about the importance of voting. So there's an action. It's pretty simple. You're like, look, I vote every year. I vote all the time. I want you to also do that, so please register to vote. If they are registered to vote, then I want you to talk to them about voting early. How many of you guys open the mailbox starting in about the beginning of October, and you're like, oh, here's a mailer on this politician, and here's a mailer on this politician, and then you walk in from the mailbox and you stand over the trash can and you throw those away, right? And they're annoying. Do you also know that they cost your party, the party that agrees with you, they cost about $1 a piece to get to your mailbox? So you can solve some of their finance issues by voting early. So let's talk about the difference between voting early in person and voting by mail, absentee voting. So if you're somewhere else in the country and you can't get to your polling location or you can't get to your county board of election, then you want to vote absentee. But if you can get to, for us, it's, there's one building in the center of the county which is where the Board of Election is, and they open early voting. So in the state of Ohio, they open early voting on October 8th. There are some states that I see that they open it in October 23rd, 25th, and everybody's state's a little different, but pay attention to that. But you can go and you can vote early. When you vote early, it stops all the robocalls, it stops all the mailers, it stops all the annoying things. So think about the bonus that you just got by hearing how you kind of want to do that. So if you take your 10 people You talk to them about registering to vote. You talk to them about voting early. Maybe you pick them up and you go vote early and go have lunch or drinks or whatever. So there are ways and reasons why you want to vote. And voting should be nonpartisan. It absolutely should be nonpartisan. Somehow, some way, the politicians have made the Second Amendment. They say voting is nonpartisan, but the Second Amendment isn't. The Second Amendment is partisan, and it's like, how is that? GOAL, the Gun Owners Action League, has a statement that says self-defense is a human right. How does one party decide that self-defense is a human right and the other party is like, oh no, that doesn't account for you, right? So no matter which party you align with, think about the fact that you need to fight to make it so your party understands the value of the Second Amendment, so that it's your value. So you kind of look at this and go, okay, there's things that I can do, there's stuff that can happen, will make it really, really easy. But I was talking to somebody from California and they're like, look, the Electoral College is going completely the other way. Does it matter? Anybody want to answer that question? It does matter. Do you know why it matters? Little politicians grew up to be big politicians, right? So you may not be able to do something at the national level, but you can take really crappy politicians and nip them in the bud while they are somebody in your county before they get a huge career. So there's a value, long-term value, in looking at and getting involved in local politics. The other part is understanding the value of down ticket. So they're watching, and right now they're talking about the different races where the Senate or the House, and taking the advantage so that if we do get a president that we're trying to convince to be pro-Second Amendment, but if we do get him in the White House, then he needs a Senate and he needs a House. So where are those races? What do they look like? Who's fighting for those? You know, it's West Virginia, Ohio, and Montana that is hard in the fight for the Senate. The House races, there are more, and again, it matters. So it matters that you're there and you do things. The other part is, are you seeing where they are? We're talking about St. Benitez, right? And the stuff that he's doing for us. Think about all the activist judges. How did they get there? We voted them there. In most of the cases, we don't know a good judge from a bad judge. Who knows good judges? Who knows bad judges? Go talk to your criminal friends. They'll tell you who the judges are, right? Other than that, when you're at the county level, you don't know. So you have to kind of look at the parties, look at the slate cards, look at that so that you have an idea. But we want to kind of nip the activist judges. So voting has a huge value in the Second Amendment, just in paying attention to what's happening in your county. So there's just a wide variety of things that can be done, easily be done. But if you don't want to get involved in politics, get involved in the party to be like the kingmaker instead of the king. If you know, it's easy enough. If you want to help somebody that is pro Second Amendment that you really like, volunteer 10 hours, just 10 hours total, to walk door to door with them. From that point forward, they will know who you are, they will know what you care about, they will call you for opinions, and you will have influence with a politician that you could have never thought about or never bought. 10 hours of your time, get to know them, walk door to door with them. So there's a wide variety. The other thing that you can do is when early voting starts. Have you ever gone to the court, or for us, it's like the courthouse and the election building are all kind of together. Have you gone there for early voting? Has anybody ever voted early and in person? Okay. Is there somebody standing there when you do to hand you a slate card to say, look, here's the whole ticket? No. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. Most of the time there's not. So one of the things that you could do that's easy, doesn't cost anything, is pull up a lawn chair, go to the party office that aligns with your party. Again, I'm a solid R, but I'm not saying you have to be. But you go then and hand out slate cards. Go there, you have to be a certain number of feet away from the door, and you hand out slate cards, and people will say thank you. Then when they come back out, they'll tell you that they voted. And they not only voted for everybody that's got an R by their name, then they voted for the judges because you've just handed them the secret key. So there are a wide variety of ways that you can get involved. And I'm just going to say that it doesn't matter which way you can. If you want to get involved at the county level, go talk to your county party or go show up to your county party and start to look at it. There's actually, we in Portage County, Ohio, have taken back the party, taken back the county. Ohio was a state that we were the battleground, one of the battleground states, and they said where Ohio goes, so goes the nation. But when you dug a little deeper, it was where 7 counties went, so went Ohio. When you dug a little deeper, my county was one of those counties. And when I dug a little deeper, I realized that in a lot of cases, the reason the Democrats were beating us is because we didn't have any Republicans running. So by just starting to show up, by starting to talk to people about running for office, we have changed the dynamic from being a county that sometimes we were blue and sometimes we were red to, since 2020, every candidate that we have run has been a Republican and has won. Because we're showing up, we're doing it. And the recipe is not hard, and I will share it with each and any one of you who's interested. But just having candidates. Now we're actually challenging our candidates to say that if you're an incumbent, that I want other people to challenge you in the primary. And they're like, wait, I'm your guy, I'm your incumbent, how can you challenge me? And I was like, well, if you suck, I want you out. And if you're good, guess what? You've already got an advantage, so you just have to run a race. But you can't sit on your keister and wait now because you was elected once. The primary is the only time we get to upgrade our candidates. Pay attention to that and get to know who they are. It's at the primary level, it's not enough to know which party they're for because you're looking at the parties. But I'm just going to say to you, the things is there's a lot of stuff that can happen, but we want to vote to be able to present to the world that that self-defense is a human right, that they cannot take that from us. And so I'm going to say, talk to 10 friends. That's all you have to do. If you want to, get involved. Talk about how you vote to your friends. We've been told for years, don't talk to your friends about how you vote. They pretty much have a clue as to how I vote, right? They pretty much have a clue that I have a gun. They pretty much have a clue. I'm pretty much an open book, and you will be surprised at how many people, when you start talking politics, how many people on election day text you and say, who am I voting for? Okay, let me send you a list, right? And so all of a sudden, now you get to have input to your morals, to your ethics, to your beliefs, to more people because you spoke up. So get involved, speak up, take action, make a new friend, vote early. And if you vote on the first or second day of early voting, it will stop them from annoying the living heck out of you. Isn't that like the secret recipe? If you walk away with one thing, that's the one thing. And then, just help out. So I just want to say thank you very much. I'm an accidental activist, but it's a pretty good place to be right now.
All right. So she wanted to be a rock star. She wanted to work on a TV star. You wanted to be a fire girl, fireman? I don't know. Not that we see gender, right? When I was a kid, I wanted to grow up and I wanted to be like Amanda Suffolk. That's what I wanted to be. All right. Our next speaker is going to be talking about the prevalence of systemic racism in the New Jersey permitting process. This is a gentleman you saw yesterday. He is the San Diego County Gun Owners Media Figure of the Year in 2022. He was the 2022 Blogger of the Year at the Gun Rights Policy Conference. He is the 2024 Journalist of the Year. He's the author of a book called Decoding Firearms. He writes for Bearing Arms. He writes for AmmoLand. He writes for The Truth About Guns, for Weekly Shooting, News 2A, Armed Lifestyle Magazine, and He was on episode 93 of Riding Shotgun with Charlie, my very good friend, John Petrolino.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be as quick as possible here. The first slide, that QR code, that'll take you to a PDF of the slide deck if you want to follow along. More importantly, it's going to have all of the citations that I'm talking about here. So I'll leave that slide up and talk about the next slide. One of the things about New Jersey is they have a really good panache for creating awesome activists. So prior to Bruin, we did not have carry. I got into this game many, many years ago. And what did we have in Jersey for years? No carry, we had all these problems. Then what did we have? Heller, we had McDonald. Very important about McDonald, that was a Second Amendment Foundation case that galvanized the Second Amendment to the states. So let's all keep that in mind. And subsequent to that, Bruin was able to go and be incorporated as well, carry. So in 2022, SCOTUS basically said, "Thou shalt let the peasants have their pitchforks." They didn't really say that, but you get the point. Today, we're going to talk about New Jersey issuing permits to carry post-Bruin, subjective standards that are used in permitting still to this day, denial rate of permits to carry. We're going to be looking at the black versus the white denial rates. We're going to look at any responses from Attorney General Matthew Platkin. We're going to look at any guidance that the Office of the Attorney General may have sent out to issuing authorities on the topic of racial bias. And we're going to see what Governor Phil Murphy has to say about this data. And then we're going to look at the current state of affairs. So the day after the Bruin decision came down, we had the Attorney General say we can no longer use justifiable need in our permitting standards. That's when people started to apply for permits to carry. After that, by August of 2022, this is just confirmed permits. So you have to understand there was a lot of anecdotal information with people saying, "Hey, I got my permit, I got my permit." These were the two people by mid-August of 2022 saying, "I got my permit, my name is this, here's a copy of my permit so you could look at it, would you write about this?" So that's not too bad in the amount of time it took to get actual permit issuance. December of 2022 is when they rolled out our Bruin response law, the carry killer as we like to call it. That's where we got a lot of sensitive locations added and a whole bunch of other provisions. One of the things that they did was a change to this 2C58, 3C5 statute. And we're going to go over this more in depth, but the change that they made was they added to the end of the statute, because the person is found to be lacking the essential character of temperament necessary to be entrusted with a firearm. So this statute was previously there, but they wanted to make it like a little bit extra. For whatever reason, in 2023, Attorney General Matthew Platkin said, "We're going to start collecting data on the issuance of permits to carry in New Jersey, and we're going to give you all that information for free. Like, you don't even have to ask for it." I don't know why he did that, but he did. And what he did is he gave us a gold mine. By earlier this year, really, they rolled out that dashboard. And part of that dashboard, when that press item came out, and this is really cute, Governor Murphy was talking about why this data is so important. He said, "There's been consistent attacks from the gun lobby." Well, something that I want everybody in this room to know, that the Coons versus Platkin case, and there's the Siegel versus Platkin case. The Coons case is a Second Amendment Foundation-backed challenge to the carry killer law. So all of you guys are part of the gun lobby. Congratulations. Yes, sure. So we got the dashboard. The first thing that I looked at on the dashboard was, let's see here, subjective standards. The subjective standards on the dashboard, 2C58, I think I skipped a slide. Let me double check. Nope, that's it. The subjective standards. So that's the first place that I looked at. There it is. Nope, that's not it. Okay, handgun purchaser permits and permits to carry. This is all tied together. This is where they can subvert your rights, again, just on opinion alone. So they will not issue a permit if the issuing authority, being the police chief or the state police barracks guy that's in charge of that, to any person where the issuance would not be in the interest of public health, safety, or welfare because the person's found to be lacking the essential character of temperament necessary to be entrusted with a firearm. Okay, so that sounds just like cause, right? They don't like you, they're not going to give you a permit. As we know from footnote number 9 from Bruin, via Shuttlesworth said, you know, the standards need to be definite standards. They need to be narrow. They need to be objective. So this standard's still being used. And then here are some of the numbers on that standard. More than 50% of the post-Bruin permit to carry issuances were denied using the subjective standard. So they're still playing games. That's kind of problematic. I reached out to the Attorney General's office. When I write to the Attorney General, I write to his press office seeking comment, and I carbon copy the Attorney General's actual email address, which I got through Open Public Records Act requests. And they said, thanks for your email. The office declines to comment. They didn't really care about the subjective denials that were going on. But there was something missing from the dashboard. Me and a bunch of colleagues were talking. We could not find the race information. Full disclosure, not really sure if it was ever there. We just couldn't find it. People smarter than me couldn't find it. So I issued out an Open Public Records Act request seeking the missing data. What did the Oprah response come back from the records custodian? They gave me instructions on how to access that data. Again, I'm not going to say that the data wasn't there, but I certainly couldn't find it. But once we got our hands on that data, we were able to sit there and look at denials by race. And this is where things start to get a little bit crazy. If you look at the denial rates, and to be full disclosure, there aren't that many denials, and we'll get to those numbers at the very end, exactly how many denials there were as of September 11th of this year. But black permit to carry applicants were being denied at a rate 2.45 times, pretty much 2.5 times of white, more than double. And a lot of people in the comments section, they say, don't read the comments, like, well, there's more criminal elements in the black community. We can discuss that, and the NAACP talks about the incarceration rate for black people in America. That's a very important conversation that we can have, but we're not going to have it today because what we're going to look at is the subjective denials next, okay? Looking at the subjective denials, just using that one statute, 2.2 times more blacks are denied over whites based on non-criminal activity. That's huge. That number right there should frighten everybody. This is in New Jersey, a Democrat stronghold that's supposed to be for the people, just not these people, apparently. So what did I do? I reached out to the Attorney General. I said, hey, AG, we got a problem. Can I get a comment from you on this denial rate? This is a subjective standard. Why is it being used still? Blacks are being denied at a 2.2 time rate using a subjective standard. And what did the office say? They declined to comment. Shocking. But they know, and he knew, because I sent it again to his email address and to the press office. So I wanted some more information. They got the information from me, so they know that this is a problem. They must be sending out guidance. That would make sense, wouldn't it? So I waited a suitable time. The chasm, the delta between when I reached out to the Attorney General the first time and when the Oprah came back, because the Oprah request was seeking more information on any guidance that they sent out. I said, hey, I want to know. What did they say? There are no records related to your request. The Attorney General sent out zero guidance on dealing with subjective standards, zero guidance on dealing with race in the permit to carry issuance. And I seem to think that that's a problem. What it makes me do is ask these questions, and what did he say? They declined to comment when I asked them, are you going to be issuing any guidance? Are you going to be doing this? Again, declined to comment. They can't say that they don't know because they've been told time and time again via their data. It's not my data. I didn't make it up. It's his dashboard. So this is the question that we have to ask. Is the New Jersey Attorney General Matthew Platkin willfully allowing these civil rights violations to occur? And that's just a question that I want everybody to consider. What does Governor Phil Murphy have to say about this? I emailed his press people, 3 of them on 3 occasions, May 7th, May 9th, and June 4th, and then I sent him a U.S. postal letter with a stamp, couple stamps because it was a thick letter, and that was on June 25th, 2024. Finally, on August 18th, 2024, I had to write an article about him ignoring me, so he never replied. I never heard back from the governor. They don't care. But, again, is this the question that we need to be asking? Is the New Jersey governor ignoring this? I sure think he is. Can he say that he doesn't know about it? I don't think he can. Where does that leave us today? Today we've had 45,000 plus approved applications for permits to carry. That's huge because we basically had 0 prior to this. This is numbers per September 11th. I wasn't able to adjust the data with the newest stuff that rolled out. Not too bad, 271 total denials. That gives us a 99.4% approval rate overall. However, 152 of them, more than half, are using an illegal subjective standard. Can't do that. So, the current race data as of September 11th, 2024. We have the information right there. Let's just cut to the chase. The overall black denial rate is 2.5 times more than the white denial rate. Using a subjective standard, blacks are denied 2.6 times more than whites. That number went up from when I started looking at this data. That number went up from when I informed the Attorney General that this is a problem. That's a big deal. That's the slide that everybody should be taking a picture of and tweeting at Murphy and the Attorney General. So we have a parting note. My parting note is this. In July, a press release came out from the Attorney General, and they were talking about systemic racism in the medical field. And he was saying that there's these underlying biases, okay? They serve as a barrier. And here's what the health commissioner said, and I want to read this verbatim. The health commissioner said in that press item, systemic racism and implicit bias are not myths and have contributed to a long story of racial and ethnic disparities. So what did I do? Can you guess who I wrote about this? I asked the Attorney General. I said, hey AG, can I get a comment on why systemic racism is important in medicine, but it's not important when it comes to issuing firearms permits? This is what the Attorney General's Office of Press had to say. When you reach out to our office with an inquiry, please limit the email to the OAG press account without copying the Attorney General. I'm now living in the Attorney General's head rent-free. He doesn't want to hear from me anymore. And then naturally, par of course, the Attorney General had no comment. Okay, thank you guys all very, very much. That QR code will take you to this slide deck. The most important part about the slide deck is on the very end of the slide deck is links to all of my work where you can track this research. I'm doing tremendous things in New Jersey. There's a lot of activism going on. The New Jersey NICS Research Center has been tremendous. I've been working with them, new group, and there's also a couple new 501c4s that I'm working with. New Jersey is going to be and continue to be a battleground on the Second Amendment, and we're taking them to task. Thank you all very, very much.
Awesome job, brother. Awesome. You can see why he wins all the awards, right? Yeah, absolutely. The next thing we have on our agenda is a break, and we're supposed to break until 10:45, which is about 4 minutes from now. So we are going to, we'll take a little bit longer. We'll come back in about 10 minutes. Thank you very much. All right, folks, please start to come on in and find your seats. We're going to be starting again in a couple of minutes. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please come on in and grab your seats so we can get started for the second half of the morning session. Please come on in and grab your seats so we can start the second half of the morning session. All right, let's kick off the second half of the morning session. Our next speaker this morning is making her first appearance at the Gun Rights Policy Conference. She is going to be talking about getting out of your comfort zone. She's the Missouri State Director for Women for Gun Rights. Let's welcome Susan Myers.
What episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie am I on, Charlie? I see how you are. Well, hey, hey. I was asked to share with you my experiences as a newer advocate for our Second Amendment, though I do feel a disclaimer is in order. I'm just a girl who stumbled straight into advocacy without a guidebook or a clue. And I've been trying to figure it out as I go. I do hope you'll find some of it useful for your efforts. This all started after being a member of a local chapter of Armed Women of America for a few years. In 2019, our incredible leader asked me to become a leader alongside her to help run the chapter. Switching from one of many being helped to now having the responsibility to properly educate and train others gave me a deeper appreciation and understanding of the importance of all women having quick, unfettered access to firearms and the ability to carry them everywhere they go. While attending my first leadership conference that same year, I heard Diana Muller speak about Women for Gun Rights. She shared the vision to take the work that was being done in DC to the state level as well. I remember deciding then and there that I would have to be a part of that, as I now felt there were ladies who in some small way were depending on me to look out for their interests. In February 2020, I had just signed up to join, and while anxiously waiting to hear back, I took the initiative and found out who was filing pro-gun bills. I then decided it'd be a good idea to reach out to Representative Jared Taylor, letting him know about Women for Gun Rights, how we were working to be the counter-visual and the counter-voice to Moms Demand Action, and to offer our assistance. I still wasn't in the group. He responded by inviting us to come testify in support of SAPA, our Second Amendment Preservation Act, at the public hearing coming up in just 3 days in the Missouri House. Yikes, what have I done? Thanks to my jumping the gun and the scrambling to find some Women for Gun Rights ladies to testify, with my being there in teal to cheer them on, came up short. Turns out, Missouri's group hadn't actually got up and running yet. I was the one that had put the offer of support out there, and I did not want to make Women for Gun Rights look bad by not coming through. So I let him know I would be testifying, but I added, please know, this will be my first time speaking publicly like this, but the cause seems worthy of stepping out of my comfort zone. That first time testifying holds so many lessons. For starters, I arrived to the empty hearing room and grabbed a seat in the very back. Soon, about a dozen ladies in red started filing in and grabbed the front. I nervously thought to myself, so it's up to little old me to counter all of them. How'd you get yourself into this again? While trying to calm my nerves, I had one of those light bulb moments, one of those it all just clicked type things where nothing is ever the same again. I was thinking about how the antis aren't nervous or timid when talking about what they believe, but their agenda is misguided and disingenuous. And so it dawned on me, if they can speak boldly about their flawed ideas, then I shouldn't have any problem whatsoever being able to confidently share what I believe. After all, I don't have to demand anything because I've got right on my side. And so just like that, the apprehension was gone. And I didn't feel outnumbered at all. What I felt was emboldened. That experience also revealed the importance of having a female voice present to speak in support of the Second Amendment. I guarantee everyone in that crowded hearing room assumed that I was there to speak in opposition to the bill. Once I had finished my testimony in support, I had 3 members of the committee who also supported the bill engage me during the questions from committee segment. They allowed me to score some more really good Pro 2A points with their great follow-up questions. What I didn't realize at the time, it's somewhat rare, at least in the Missouri legislature, that an individual will get follow-up questions during a lengthy hearing. Most will get their 3 minutes and are told, thank you for your testimony, next. It took getting a few more hearings under my belt before I picked up on this. That's when I decided to go back and watch that previous testimony. Those committee members seemed to want to get as much out of me as they could while they had me. But why? I made some good points. I even made them laugh. I used my testimony to bring attention to the female perspective of how the infringements the bill sought to protect me from would impact my personal carry and shooting sports choices. I showed up and countered the ladies in red that day with sincerity and purpose. That alone may have been enough. Once I figured out that one person's perspective can hold significance, it made me more determined than ever to consistently attend public hearings, providing testimony that reflects the concerns and desires of women like me who prioritize unhindered ownership and caring for self-defense. Oftentimes, I'm the only woman there speaking in favor of guns. I've even been the only person in support a time or two. Individuals need to show up. You never know if it's your perspective that's missing from the conversation. Part of my preparing for testimonies is watching previous MOLEDGE hearings on the same or similar subject. I'll make notes of common themes or specific points those on the opposite side of the issue are making. Doing this allows me to draft my testimony in a way that addresses those head on, and in some cases, it has worked to stop them from being repeated going forward. Just one small way that I can tangibly tell I'm making a difference. Dig for facts to back up your stance. An example, after testifying a few times on a bill to repeal our public transit carry ban, I got to wondering just how many states had such a restriction. I looked and couldn't find anything. I ended up using the USCCA's reciprocity map, clicking on every single state and searching their location restrictions. I was shocked to learn only 3 states and DC banned carry on public transit prior to Bruin. I shared this information with the bill sponsor and always touched on it in my testimonies. After Bruin, when other states started passing their own public transit carry bans, you can bet I was making sure every committee member was aware that the likes of New York, New Jersey, and California were now scrambling to be like Missouri. And thanks to the good works of many who are here this weekend, I also get to include updates on the many court cases that are ongoing. I turn all this into fact sheets I leave for each committee member and drop off in leadership's office as well. Early on, I started tracking all firearms-related bills filed each session. I like to reach out to the sponsor of good bills to thank them for their efforts and to offer assistance in directing emails or calls from Women for Gun Rights delegates to help facilitate the progression of bills. This may involve reaching out to encourage a committee chairman to schedule a hearing or to leadership to request committee assignments or urging prompt floor consideration of a bill once it is passed out of committee. Most of these efforts are shared on social media as a call to action to help bring attention to the situation and to encourage others to get involved as well. Sharing direct links for people to submit their testimony online also raises awareness and facilitates participation, especially if you also share a tutorial walking them through the process so that it'll be quick and easy to have their voices heard. Whatever I'm sharing, I make sure to tag the bill sponsor along with any other relevant individuals to garner their attention and ensure they're aware of the efforts on their behalf or on the request we're making of them, depending on who's tagged and why. It is easy to be overwhelmed when getting this involved in the legislative process. You just have to trust that working hard to make it easier for others to participate is worthy and beneficial to the cause. And if you're tagging your legislators, then there's the added bonus of them seeing someone unpaid advocating hard on behalf of their piece of legislation. While the legislative process can be frustrating for bill sponsors as well, your dependable, concerted effort to exert polite pressure in alignment with their guidance is an effective way to convey your appreciation and support. That's part of how good relationships are formed. Like most of us, I have an opinion on just about everything. But the Second Amendment is the issue that pulled me into the arena with such a force that I choose never to distract from it by publicly chiming in on other topics. Issues divide people. Why would I want to put up a wall that turns someone away before we can even begin to have a conversation about firearms and protecting ourselves and others. So whether it's at the Capitol or social media, I only talk about guns in 2A. I'm trying to speed up. Another aspect I never dreamed I'd be a part of is volunteering with campaigns. But when my district state senator, Eric Burleson, who's a staunch 2A champion, decided to take a shot at the U.S. House, I knew I would have to do everything I could to help get him there. I switched from testifying on his bills to throwing candy in parades, door knocking, and working his table at gun shows. It was just another way of showing my appreciation for the work he had been doing on behalf of gun owners. Not only that, but by putting in some sweat equity, you're letting them know you expect to see their good works continue. Being state director for Women for Gun Rights has afforded me the opportunity to take part in the annual trip to DC twice now. First time, I struggled to get an appointment with my congressman, only to have them cancel day of. But last year, the group of ladies I was teamed with got to meet with my new U.S. Representative Burleson. He and I know where we both stand on the issues, so it was nice to allow the ladies to converse with him while I filled his aid in on the bills we hope to see progress made on and making sure he was aware of the planned press conference next day. We'd been told Burleson wouldn't be able to make it to our press conference, but to my delight, he made the time, even showed up early and visited with more of the Women for Gun Rights ladies. I even got a nice shout out from him during his remarks to the press. This is what can result from putting in honest, sincere efforts to safeguard and restore our Second Amendment in your state level. Even when it seems futile and your work doesn't seem to be paying off with signed legislation, it is worth the effort. Missouri's last session ended miserably and abruptly for 2A following Kansas City's Super Bowl parade shooting. Left feeling dejected and betrayed by our legislature, I spoke with a former rep friend about it, questioning whether or not I was doing any good at all. She replied, "You're keeping the issue alive." She brought me right back up. Dang right I am. Those of you out there working your tails off in your states, thank you. And if you're here today because this fantastic event happened to be taking place in your neck of the woods, thank you for showing up and learning what's going on. I encourage you to step out of your comfort zone, take a stand, and use your voice to bring about positive change in favor of our Second Amendment. And I beat the clock.
All right. All right, we're very glad she stepped out of her comfort zone. 8 seconds left, I think, is what she had, so that's fabulous. Not that we were, 12 seconds, sorry. I'm a little slow on the uptake, right? Our next speaker is going to be talking about Defying Bruin. Lower courts continue to add requirements onto the Second Amendment that do not exist. He's the litigation counsel for SAF. He's the owner of the Dillon Law Group. He's a regular on the San Diego County Gun Owners Radio show, Gun Owners Radio. Let's welcome John Dillon.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. A special thanks to the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms and the Second Amendment Foundation for bringing us all together. This is, I think, the fifth GRPC that I've been able to attend and speak at, and they just get better every year. We have better and better speakers, we have better and better attendees, and we're really doing a lot in this field. So again, thank you for everything. So the landmark Bruin decision should have reset the game in Second Amendment litigation, and in many ways it did. The Supreme Court's clear instructions, drawing from history and constitutional texts, should have guided states like my own, California, toward honoring the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Yet, in the aftermath of Bruin, instead of compliance, we have seen a sharp and adverse reaction from several states attempting to evade Supreme Court's clear and binding precedent. So today I'm going to discuss two topics that I think will become prominent issues in Second Amendment litigation. First, I'll address the lower court's ongoing and continued attempt to manipulate Bruin's Second Amendment plain text analysis by engrafting new language into the plain text. And second, I'm going to cover California, specifically California's attempt to reinstate subjective standards into the concealed carry permit application process in a way to deny law-abiding applicants the right to carry firearms in public by using subjective, undefined standards in defiance of Bruin. So the first topic today, the Second Amendment's plain text. First and foremost, when the Second Amendment's text states that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, this language needs to be applied uniformly across the country. And according to the Supreme Court, when the plain text covers an individual's conduct, the Constitution presumptively protects that conduct. It's a very simple question. And yet, we're seeing a disturbing trend in the lower courts in states like California, New Mexico, Maryland, and several others, implementing new ways to chip away at the Second Amendment protections under the guise of reinterpreting what constitutes arms under the plain text of the Second Amendment. So, for example, I've been working closely with knife rights in litigation against California's attempt to ban switchblades or automatically opening knives. And which are knives that are clearly covered by the Second Amendment's plain text. Historically speaking, knives and other bladed instruments were considered arms long before the firearm was ever invented. Now, quite simply, arms are all weapons of offense or armor of defense. You had Alan Beck speaking a little bit earlier, talking about all the different types of weapons that are considered arms. And as such, both Heller and Bruin have rightly stated that the text of the Second Amendment extends to all instruments that constitute bearable arms, even those that were not in existence at the time of the founding. But in the continued quest to undermine our rights, some courts seek to add new restrictions, falsely claiming that certain arms aren't protected unless they are widely used specifically for individual self-defense. And anyone who's ever read the text of the Second Amendment should know that these terms are not there. So we see this clearly in our Knife Rights v. Bonta case challenging switchblades, where the court ruled that automatically opening knives or switchblades were not protected because they supposedly were not in common use specifically for individualized self-defense situations. This ruling came with the additional finding that the state failed to meet its burden of providing a sufficient historical justification for the ban in question. So in other words, while the state could not provide sufficient historical arms regulations that could possibly justify California's ban, the court still sided with the state, stating that, well, it didn't even matter because these knives somehow were not arms. Now, on the other hand, only a few days after that wonderful decision, the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court offered a sharp contrast. It ruled that switchblades are indeed arms under the Second Amendment's plain text, and the court upheld the original meaning of the Constitution that arms refers to all weapons that facilitate self-defense and all other lawful purposes. Now, this fight obviously isn't just about switchblades. Our right to bear arms includes the right not only to own firearms, but to purchase firearms, to train with firearms, to maintain proficiency with them, and it covers what some would call the accessories to firearms. And any attempt to erode these rights by trying to reinterpret the constitutional text or history is nothing more than a smokescreen to unconstitutionally restrict your rights. So to give you a few examples here, in Snope v. Brown, the Fourth Circuit upheld Maryland's assault weapons ban by holding that the AR-15 is most useful in military service, limiting the right to individual self-defense. and claiming that these firearms fell outside the definition of arms under the plain text of the Second Amendment. And again, in my wonderful state of California, you have United States v. Elenas. The Ninth Circuit introduced a flawed interpretation that continues to burden plaintiffs in Second Amendment challenges. Instead of placing the burden on the government to justify its regulation, the Ninth Circuit actually placed the burden on the plaintiffs to prove that the arms in question are in common use specifically for self-defense. Now, this is not what the Second Amendment prescribes, nor is it consistent with the Bruin standard. When the plain text of the Second Amendment covers the type of conduct like possessing arms, that burden should shift to the government immediately. It's much like a First Amendment case where you ask the initial question, is this case dealing with speech of any kind? Yes, it is. Let's move on. That's the same thing when it comes to the Second Amendment plain text analysis. Unfortunately, Ninth Circuit is starting to disagree with that. Now, another troubling example comes from the Rocky Mountain Gun Owners v. Paulus case. This is a Colorado case where the court ruled that the Second Amendment's plain text did not cover the conduct of purchasing firearms. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. How can the right to keep and bear arms exist if we don't also have the right to acquire and purchase arms? Now, the court in the Rocky Mountain case concluded that purchasing a firearm was a mere means to an end and not protected under the Second Amendment. This kind of twisted logic that we're fighting against is one where the courts attempt to slice away at the Second Amendment by imposing arbitrary limitations that do not exist in the Second Amendment. Another case, Oakland Tactical Supply v. Howell Township. In this case, the Sixth Circuit panel applied a very bizarre interpretation of the Second Amendment's plain text. Here, the court ruled that the Second Amendment's plain text does in fact cover shooting at distances. However, the plain text of the Second Amendment does not protect shooting at distances over 1,000 yards. I don't recall reading that in the text. So this kind of arbitrary line drawing creates confusion, to say the least, and it weakens our Second Amendment rights. And again, there's no such explicit or implicit limitation within the Second Amendment's plain text. Unfortunately, it doesn't stop there. In United States v. Price, the Fourth Circuit upheld a ban on firearms that had defaced serial numbers, stating that such firearms were not in common use for self-defense, or not in common use for lawful purposes. Now, the Fourth Circuit ignored the principle that the Second Amendment protects all bearable arms, not just those that the government finds useful or trackable. Judge Gregory, in his dissent, rightly pointed out that the constitutional guarantees subject to the whims of any future judge about the usefulness of serial numbers is no constitutional guarantee at all. He warned against this kind of judicial overreach, and we must heed that warning. We have heard from other speakers today that have been discussing other cases regarding magazines, suppressors, and even body armor, all of which fall under the plain text definition of arms, and all of which you're going to see governments and courts try to redefine as not arms under the plain text of the Second Amendment. So quite simply, the right to arms must encompass the right to purchase firearms, ammunition, accessories for their use, and training and proficiency required to effectively use those firearms. They're all clearly arms, and all clearly arms-bearing conduct that falls under the plain text of the Second Amendment by any logical or rational reasoning. But these cases highlight a very disturbing trend by the lower courts in imposing new language and new requirements, new limitations within the plain text analysis under Bruin that they're trying to abuse. So moving on to the second topic of CCW applications. Now, in the broad constitutional context, the decision in Bruin rejected the means-end scrutiny analysis that plagued us for over a decade when it came to Second Amendment litigation. And more specifically, it rejected the good cause may issue application for CCWs, or concealed carry permit applications. Now, no longer may states implement subjective, undefined standards, making it virtually impossible for the everyday ordinary citizen to carry a firearm in public. Yet almost immediately after the Bruin decision, Many states, including California, enacted what are now commonly referred to as Bruin response bills. And in California, our Bruin response bill was done through Senate Bill 2. Now, the most popular or infamous issue of Senate Bill 2 was essentially trying to make the entire state of California a sensitive place in which it was illegal to carry a firearm in public, even if you had a concealed carry permit. Thankfully, that part of the law has already been challenged, and we've had favorable decisions there. Now, however, SB 2 also has many other amendments to the current law that are just now starting to show themselves after some implementation. And one specific section of the California Penal Code involves the investigatory background check for CCW applications. Now, under Penal Code 26206, an applicant shall be deemed a disqualified person and cannot receive a license if the applicant is reasonably likely to be a danger to self, others, or the community at large, as demonstrated by anything in the application for the license or through an investigation or through the results of a psychological assessment. Now, I want you to pay close attention to that language. The applicant will be deemed a disqualified person and cannot receive a concealed carry permit if the licensing authority determines that they're a danger to themselves or others based on anything in the investigation. Now, there's no question that psychological evaluations, questionnaires, or assessments are entirely subjective, but the language contained in this specific section of the Penal Code allows for an individual to be denied their right to carry a firearm in public based off of what the licensing authority determines to be approved. And noteworthy, this standard does not require any kind of criminal conviction or any order of the court that would deny the person the right to carry in public. Nor does it require any kind of determination by a court that the person is actually, in fact, a danger to themselves or others. The application of this new subjective, open-ended standard is creating a new tiered system in which an individual can be able to purchase, own, and use a firearm, but they're still disqualified from being able to carry that firearm in public. Again, I am not aware of that being in the Second Amendment. Now, I'm currently working with several clients who are challenging their denials of their CCW applications based solely on memberships to certain groups. In essence, these individuals have been denied their right to publicly carry because the issuing agency in California does not like who they hang out with. Despite the fact that all of these clients have no criminal record of any kind, no history of mental illness, and not even a single complaint ever made against them. They've been forced to hire an attorney, appeal to the court, pay attorney's fees, costs, and wait months in order to have to convince a judge that they should be allowed to apply for their CCW license, all because the issuing agency does not like who they associate with. To be clear, what we're witnessing is states and government agencies denying individuals their Second Amendment rights through a violation of their First Amendment right of association. Now, I'm not going to stand here and complain. I've been working on a solution. Not only are we petitioning for those individual clients to get their CCW permits, but I would say be on the lookout for a federal complaint that's going to be filed pretty shortly to address this specific issue. Now, I highlight this issue to keep us all on our guard. Bruin did wonderful, amazing things, but it also caused courts, states, governments to react in a very adverse and aggressive way in which they're going to try more and more to restrict our rights. Whether it's switchblades, AR-15s, firearm accessories, training, public carry, these are all arms protected by the Second Amendment, and the plain text is not open to reinterpretation to suit modern political agendas. Thank you.
All right, nice job. Perfect timing. All right, he was great, ended right on time. 0 seconds, this is perfect. Our next speaker is going to talk about empowerment at the crossroads. She is the Women's Advocacy Director and the Women's Program Assistant at the Gun Owners Action League, which was this year's Grassroots Organization of the Year. Has been on my show the most out of anyone I've had on my show. She's been on episodes 139, 161, and 180. Let's welcome Carrie Ann Auclair.
So I want to tell you a little bit of a story that happened to me on my way here. So if anybody knows me, I'm afraid of flying, like really afraid of flying. I make noises, it's kind of embarrassing. So just so happens that I was sitting next to a pilot. So we got in a long conversation. We had a 6-hour flight. So of course, we talked about a lot of different things. The one thing that he talked to me about is the plane. He was educating me on the plane, hoping that it would give me some knowledge and maybe not make me so scared for the next time flying. At the end of the 6-hour flight, he looked at me and he said, "It's kind of funny. You're afraid of flying, but you're not afraid of speaking in front of people." I said, "Oh no, I am afraid of speaking in front of people." But as Lena Michalik says, you just gotta do it scared. So here I go. Dear friends, advocates, and defenders of liberty, if you could all stand with me. Before I begin, I'm trying to move my mic so I can see myself here. Okay, let me take a moment to acknowledge the power in this room. This makes me want to cry. This is incredible. And the people that are watching this at home, this is for you too. We stand united together for the cause that is better and bigger than us. And together we can do this. I want you to look at each other and shake each other's hands and thank every single one of you for standing here today to be brave enough to fight for what is our right, our civil rights. It is so important. Together we stand united in our commitment to defend these rights. Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you for gathering here today. United united by our shared dedication to defending our Second Amendment and the rights to safeguard our freedoms and our lives. As a woman, as a mother, a community leader, I'm honored to stand before you as Women Program Assistant for Goal and the Advocacy Director for Gun Owners Action League. I'm also proud to be part of the State Director for Women for Gun Rights and Armed Women of America, and also on the board for the Second Amendment Institute. Before I took these roles on, my relationship with firearms was much different. I didn't like them. In fact, I was scared of them. I was one of those mothers that didn't let their kids play with toy guns, squirt guns even. And frankly, I didn't know if I was ever gonna want one, but then I woke up. My husband, who worked nights when my kids were much younger, was deeply shaken by a story in the news and insisted that we get a firearm to protect our family. I said, okay. Not knowing anything about it, we did. He wanted to know that if anything happened when he wasn't there, that I'd be ready. That was the first step in my journey, but the real turning point came next. My kids were playing at my neighbor's house, and they were very, very young, and one of their friends that they were playing with was looking for the key to get in the gun box. Thankfully, that firearm was safely secured, and that never happened, but it really woke me up, and it shook my world. I realized that the importance of education is so crucial. I dove head first. I looked for everywhere I could possibly go to get educated. We must understand safety, and this experience, again, pushed me further into the world of firearms. And as I stated, as I started to learn more, I saw women approaching us, wanting to learn with us. They wanted to come and learn with us, right? Because why wouldn't women want to learn with other women? Just saying. Like many, I didn't have a lot of money, so I looked to YouTube. That's where I found Kelly Pigeon from Armed and Feminine. I watched every video that she could possibly make, or that she possibly made. And one time we had a conversation. She's the one that led me to Armed Women of America, that led me to Women for Gun Rights, and that led me to GOAL. Her videos empowered me to start training, and I'm so thankful that she did introduce me to Armed Women of America, because now I'm standing here before you fighting for our civil rights, educating women on a daily basis to be comfortable and confident with their firearms. Today I stand here as a voice for women across the country who refuse to accept they are helpless in the face of danger. Far too long, society has painted an image of gun ownership that hasn't included us, but we're changing that. Every day, women across America embrace rights to self-defense, training with purpose, and becoming empowered to protect themselves and their loved ones. This movement goes beyond firearms. It's about reclaiming our independence and control of our lives. Women have been long portrayed as victims, as we must find someone to protect ourselves or save us. But we know better. We are our own first responders. We are proving that every day. The growing number of women purchasing firearms and seeking training is evident that we refuse to be helpless, and we are taking the change in our own safety. I'm going to read you a statistic. The statistic shows that the movement is growing. According to 2021 study by the National Shooting Sports Foundation, nearly 40% of first-time gun buyers were women. In 2022, the reports revealed that the number of women obtained concealed carry permits is rising faster than men, showing that more women are taking personal safety into their own hands. Being part of these organizations like Women for Gun Rights, Armed Women of America, and GOAL is just not a role for me. It's a passion. It is a mission. These organizations have given me the platform to advocate for women's rights and ensure that we have the necessary resource, support, and education for building a legacy of empowered women who are prepared, confident in their abilities to defend themselves. Armed Women of America, some of you may already know who the organization is. Women across the country with firearms, we train them in a safe, supportive environment where they can learn skills at their own pace, building both proficiency and community, and honestly, in my opinion, a family. I remember teaching a class one time, and a woman broke down crying because she had to shoot at the end of the course. She was so scared of a gun because the media portrays guns as bad. However, at the end of the training, in a setting that acknowledged her concerns and moved her at her own pace, she gained the confidence and skills she needed. It is crucial that training, no matter who provides it, is focused on the needs of the individual to ensure they feel safe and empowered. And boy, was she empowered. And the look on her face holding up that target just said it all. I got goosebumps thinking about it, and it was so super important. And you know what I just realized? I haven't even changed my slides yet. Oh my goodness. Okay, so there I am, and there's being a responsible gun owner. Okay. Oh God, that was like a real big thing. So anyways, going back to her with the big smile on her face with the target, so empowering. Women for Gun Rights focuses on advocacy in the national and state level, fighting to ensure women's voices are heard in a civil rights debate. Together, these organizations help women realize that their right to self-defense is a vital part of their personal safety and freedoms. GOAL, Gun Owners Action League of Massachusetts, is a broad organization that supports gun owners across Massachusetts, providing legislative advocacy, education, and community outreach. GOAL works tirelessly to ensure that all citizens can exercise their Second Amendment rights and educate the public for responsible gun ownership. Goal's mission extends far beyond advocacy. Our education programs provide crucial training for gun owners and non-gun owners alike, like Refuse to be a Victim, pepper spray classes, and we actually create NRA and RSO instructors. And we have legal training events, and we also have women on range events. We believe that education is being prepared are our foundation of both personal and community safety. Goal also works closely with local law enforcement, policymakers, and communities to promote laws and support gun ownership while ensuring public safety. We want to foster a culture where law-abiding citizens can exercise their right without fear of government overreach. Goal has also created a domestic violence page, which I've had the privilege of helping create. Goal recognizes the crucial need for specialized support for those affected by domestic violence. We believe that empowering individuals to take charge of their personal safety, and that extends to victims of domestic violence. For many survivors, having a firearm can mean the difference between life and death. And as you know, putting a firearm on a woman's hip creates an equalizer. Goal provides these individuals with resources including education and how to responsibly use a firearm and store a firearm, and also access non-lethal means of defense, like pepper spray. Our domestic violence page, which offers information and support to victims, is a part of our broader mission to protect and empower all members of our community. Domestic violence knows no boundaries. It can happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. And we are committed to providing real solutions, not just symbolic gestures. So why do we fight? Our Second Amendment is the right to bear arms and a safeguard against tyranny. Our founding fathers understood that no rights could be guaranteed without the ability to defend oneself. The Second Amendment protects all of our freedoms. It's a check on power, ensuring that the government never has the authority to strip us of our autonomy. Throughout history, oppressive regimes have disarmed their citizens before committing such of the worst atrocities known to humanity. This disarmament of population has often led to erosions of freedom, civil liberties, and ultimately, human life. We must not let this happen in America. That's why our fight is so important. It's not just about guns. It's about our freedom. It's about preserving the rights to live without fear, to protect our homes and our family, and to hold our government accountable. And that is worth fighting for every single day. Oh God, I got 2 minutes. Well, let me just quickly tell you a little bit about the fight in Massachusetts. There was a listening tour on February 9th, 2023. Representative Michael Day did a listening tour. He was trying to create safer communities. He really didn't, and unfortunately, he wasn't listening. So with that said, after the listening tours came Bill HD 4420, changed numbers 6 times, and now it's H4885, and then just became law, Chapter 135, Act of 2024. But during these listening tours, I was able to attend 9 out of 11 listening tours, and I have to tell you, I keep forgetting to change this, so my apologies. I have to tell you that there was a woman that stood up and made me so proud. So proud because, hold on, there it is. There it is. See her in the middle? That's her. She was part of Armed Women of America and Women for Gun Rights. I never thought that she was gonna stand up, and boy, did she. She was incredible. She captured I remember when she spoke, I'll never forget the emotions behind her voice and the fight behind her words. She spoke about safety, responsibility, and the importance of protecting our civil rights. and it resonated deeply with everybody in the room. That night reminded me of how and why I fight for what I fight for. I'm so proud of her, and I'm so proud of every single person that stands up, even though they're scared, and boy, am I scared right now, but here I am. So call to action. I'll just be very quickly. So call to action. Vote. We've been talking about this for, 3 days. You gotta vote. Get involved with your town hall. Meet with your mayor and your selectmen. Volunteer wherever you can. And get educated. Coming to events like this is crucial. So before I leave you, I just want to say real quickly, I'm incredibly grateful for the Second Amendment Foundation for their unwavering support and for goal to enabling me to stand here before you today. Together we can continue to rise, not as victims, but as victors. Educate yourself, advocate for our rights, have a conversation, and do it scared. Thank you.
Now you see why I had her on for 3 episodes, right? All right, next we're going to do a little fireside chat with Alan and Julianne. Alan is episode 100 from Riding Shotgun with Charlie. Alan brought me out to Bellevue, and I got to drive his Corvette around Bellevue, and I had to squeeze myself in and slide myself out, which was kind of fun. And Julianne was episode 124. Of course, we brought Ivy up as well. All right, so this is going to be reflections of 50 years of defending, restoring, and securing the Second Amendment. So, first question to kind of get you guys going: what came first, the CCR-BKA or Second Amendment Foundation?
The Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms came first in 1972, and after working with the committee for 2 years on mostly grassroots lobbying and direct lobbying, I recognized there's a need for a foundation to do legal defense and public education work. And so the foundation was formed in '74, and this is now our 50th anniversary.
That's fabulous. And GRP started 39 years ago. How did this come about?
Well, I think the genesis of GRPC actually started not to be as big as we are in today, but a much smaller nucleus of leaders of the national gun rights groups, which at that point in time weren't even talking to each other. And there was a need to bring them all together so we could sort of be on the same page, know what we were doing, knowing what was needed to be done in the next year or so. And so it started more as a smaller nucleus of leaders of just the national groups.
Very cool. 39 years of GRPC, what are some of your favorite places that you've been to, or maybe some of the favorite moments that you've had?
Well, we've had a lot of terribly interesting GRPCs. I can think of more of them that stand out because of the sheer confusion. We had a GRPC in Chicago where a gentleman who was being transferred by the FAA to Honolulu was unhappy. So he went to the FAA's main digital area. He cut the wires with an axe and then set it on fire. So, not unsurprisingly, it took out the entire center of the country in terms of any FFA help, and so it shut down the Chicago airport, which was a little inconvenient. So I remember I had my cell phone, and I probably had Alan's cell phone, and I had one on each ear, and I was going back and forth, trying to figure out who was going to speak, who was going to be able to get in, who was not going to be able to get in. That was a challenge. Last year, GRPC was in Phoenix, and it had been in Phoenix for numerous years, and we were very, happy with it, knew the hotel well and everything else. About 3 months before GRPC, the hotel burnt down. So that was another interesting thing where we had to change everything. Yeah, Alan, which ones would you bring up?
Well, the GRPC, to me, that sort of had a great effect on gun rights to begin with. 9/11, September 11th, and our GRPC is like 2-3 weeks away, and the airlines are all shut down, banks are shut down, everything is shut down. Are we going to be able to have a conference? We've got the hotel booked. What's going to happen? Right now, the airplanes are not in the air. What do we do? And we decided we're going to go ahead with this conference even if we're the only people there, and we're just going to do it. And lo and behold, a few days before the conference, airplanes are back up in the air. The question is anybody going to get on an airplane? And lo and behold, we had tremendous attendance. People wanted to be with like-minded people you felt secure with. And at that conference, at one of the breaks, and I always talk about how sitting and talking with other people, meeting new people, and sharing ideas outside the agenda itself is important. A couple airline pilots come up to me, one from United, one from Delta. I believe Jim Irvine was the Delta pilot with Delta Airlines, and then somebody from another pilot from another airline. I go, we want to start an armed pilots group to lobby to get pilots to be able to be armed. I said, well, great, our agenda is fixed, but I'm going to stick you guys in at lunch, and you talk about it. And at lunch, they raised a whole bunch of dollars from people to get the organization started. The Armed Airline Pilots Association grew up and started at the GRPC, and lo and behold, today we have armed pilots.
The pilots had been able to be armed, but because if you go back to all of the plane hijackings that took place in the Caribbean, but it had sort of fallen away, and there was really no mechanism for them to be certified. The thing that I remember about that GRPC is I remember the electric energy in our office. Every single badge had a red, white, and blue ribbon that had been added to it. We couldn't pick it was electric. The people who were there, it was electric. It was, our children did not want us to fly. They were a little concerned, but we said it would all be okay, and it was all okay. It was a very moving time.
That GRPC was held in the Cincinnati area, but Northern Kentucky, where the Cincinnati airport really was based. It was a very memorable GRPC.
Very cool. To me, it makes sense to arm pilots, just like it makes sense to arm teachers. When we hop onto an airplane, our lives in the pilot's hand, regardless of whether or not they're carrying a gun. It's the same way with teachers. And I've been a teacher since the 1900s. When I talk with my teacher friends and I say, I let the teachers have some training, let them get a permit and carry, and let them train with the police, let them take the Faster Saves Lives courses. When you take your kids to school, some people drop their kids off at school at 7 o'clock in the morning and pick them up after 5 o'clock in the evening. Their kids' lives are in the teacher's hands all day long. Why not trust them with a firearm?
I just wanted to change the subject on your hair. I just want to thank Julianne. This is the 39th GRPC, but the first 38, Julianne was in charge of making everything happen. And there wouldn't have been any GRPCs if it were not for Julianne.
All right. These are incredible events. To me, my first one was in Tampa in 2016, and everyone says that going to these is like a family reunion, and I say it's not a family reunion until the second one that you go to, because then you get familiar with everybody. So I absolutely love coming to this, and there's no way I don't want to not come back. This is my one thing to go to. what are some of the biggest moments that you've had? Like, you've had the McDonald case, you've had so many cases over the years.
I get asked that question a lot, and there have been so many big moments, it's really hard to say this is the big one, but there's one that means an awful lot to me personally. And I'm going to start with it, and then I'm going to give it to Julianne to talk about the part of the follow-up on it. But the McDonald versus Chicago case obviously was big for the movement, because without it, all these other lawsuits you see filing today couldn't be filed. It opened up, not only knocked out the Chicago gun ban, but incorporated the Second Amendment through the 14th, making it applicable to the states and cities, so we can go to federal court and challenge all these laws. But what really stands out to me is really important. Otis McDonald, the lead plaintiff, was an African-American man who grew up in a dirt poor in Mississippi. His mother, when he was a teenager, basically gave him all the last money she had, put him on a train, or I think it was a train, sent him to Chicago and said, go to Chicago, make something of yourself, and make your mama proud. I knew that story because it was in print. Anyway, when we won McDonald versus Chicago, we're walking down, I don't know how many of you have been at the United States Supreme Court, but there's giant stairs that come down from the court to the street. And we're about midway coming down the stairs, and Otis stops me dead cold, looks at me and says, Alan, I just want to thank you and the Second Amendment Foundation, because without you, I couldn't have made my mama proud. And I was in tears. I'm going to tear up now. And what it is not just a piece of paper for the Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment. It's not just about constitutional law, and it's not just even about people. It's about human rights. And it's just really right there, and it made my whole life, that one statement from Otis McDonald. Otis, a few years later, passed away, and I was stuck on staff business, I believe. I don't remember where I was, but I wasn't able to go to the funeral. But Julianne represented the Second Amendment Foundation at the funeral. And I'd like to just let Julie comment a little bit about the church service. And
over the years, we've worked with hundreds of plaintiffs, and each one had a story, and each one had a compelling story. And the civil rights are my passion. I flew to Chicago. I was on my way, actually, to Tampa. But I said, oh, okay, I can go through Chicago. And then Alan Gura, who was the attorney, was on his way to LA, and he said, okay, I can stop in Chicago. So we met in Chicago, and then we went to find a hotel room. And there's a lot more stories to the Otis thing. I see we have time, don't have time. But we went to the funeral. It was on the south side of Chicago. We were in a African-American church. Otis's nephew was the reverend. The first 12, 15 rows were Otis's family. And, we knew Otis, we knew his family, but we weren't all that close. Of course, I was really close to Otis and stuff because we'd worked with him for years. All these things take years, so you get to know people. But we were all sitting there together, and then Fred, who was Otis's nephew, said, I want all you people to stand up. Okay, so everybody in the church stands up. And then he says, you people in the back, you just keep standing. Okay, we're doing that. Then he tells everybody else in the church to turn around and look at us. He said, these are the white people that care for all of us. And these are the people who want to take care of all of you. And I want you to applaud them and give them a standing ovation. And I was moved by it, but I was extremely moved by it. How could you not be? But I was like, this is why we do this. We do this for people because we believe in it. We really, 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 really believe in it. And yeah, it was. I was almost embarrassed because it was like what we should have been doing. That was our mission and our goal. We didn't need any extra notice or anything else, but it was, something you don't forget.
Anything else before we wrap things up here?
No, I just say I think the important thing is the number of people we've touched and the advancement of our human freedom. And it's just been really important, and it's all you people that really deserve all the credit for it. Because without you, there would be no Gun Rights Policy Conference, there'd be no Second Amendment Foundation, there'd be no Citizens Committee with the right to keep and bear arms. So from the bottom of our hearts, we thank all of you.
Excellent, thank you. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One last thing real quickly. This is Winston 4. All 4 Winstons have been at every, one of them at least has been at every GRPC, and he's sort of like the conference's mascot. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and I would like to bring up our last speaker for today, talking about the future of the Second Amendment Foundation and our unique place in the Second Amendment, episode 159 of Riding Shotgun with Charlie, Adam Kraut.
There you go. Good morning, everybody. This is where you all go, good morning, Adam. There we go, better. So as you know, my name's Adam Kraut. I'm the executive director here at the Second Amendment Foundation. Let's just give Alan and Julianne another round of applause. It's because of their hard work, dedication, and the success of building an institution over the last 50 years that we are standing here today, and why gun rights and the Second Amendment stands where it is. So thank you both for your commitment to the Second Amendment. As you may know, planning for an event's a time-intensive endeavor, and once this GRPC ends, we're going to be right back into planning for next year. So I do want to take a moment to recognize the staff. They're in the back of the room there. If you guys could all just stand up real quick, please. It's through their time and effort that this event this year was possible. So Jennifer, Danielle, Yevgeny, Emerson, Kim, Lauren, Matt, Dana, and Tanner, our newest addition, thank you all for your dedication this weekend to make sure that this event happened as it did. With that, I'm going to just start with a little bit of a story here. And we're going to talk about me for a moment. And I know we don't want to talk about me long. So I joined staff as a life member back in 2013. At that same time, I joined the NRA as a life member as well. And this is when I was a student in law school. And I had a pretty intense interest in Second Amendment rights and advocacy, but I didn't really know a whole lot. And anecdotally, my understanding was this. NRA were the people that were on Capitol Hill and in state legislatures doing all the lobbying, and the Second Amendment Foundation was the place that was making moves in the courtroom and winning in courts. Now, I've been involved in this area for quite a while now. I know that's not the full picture. And as you know, and many of you sitting in this room, because you're involved in the various state groups, it's much bigger than 2 groups. As I've come to learn, the world is a big place. But what I learned when I came to SAF was that the history of SAF is much deeper and much richer than just my microcosmic view of they do things in the courtroom. And in fact, as you all just kind of heard, SAF has been at the forefront of building the foundation necessary to elevate a case to the Supreme Court. And Heller was the first case, but McDonald, as Alan recounted, was the case that has opened the door to the floodgates of the litigation that you all see today. It's the reason we are able to sue all the states and the municipalities and the local counties for violations of the Second Amendment. I'd be remiss if I didn't quickly mention that last year during GRPC, we had a film crew here who did a number of interviews with staff, lawyers, and scholars who have worked with SAF over the years. And we've been releasing videos in a series called Reflections, 5 Decades of SAF's 2A Advocacy. In that series, which there will be a longer form video coming soon, you can kind of hear a little more history of the organization, and I would encourage you all to watch it because it is quite interesting to learn some of the very intricate details of what SAF has done over the years. But Alan's vision of how the world should be is a realization today. But the work that began in 1974, it's only started. And to give you a little perspective, since SAF's inception, we've been involved in over 260 lawsuits. That's either as a party, as an amicus, or in some cases funding others' lawsuits in order to advance the Second Amendment. And more importantly, the impact it's had on people, individuals, communities across the nation is unmeasurable. Today, we have over 55 active lawsuits across the country on issues ranging from everything from dealing with assault weapons bans, young adult purchase and carry, sensitive places, permitting issues, and more. And we are happy, privileged, and honored to be able to engage in that litigation with some of our partners like CRPA, Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus, and CCDL. Without being able to work with local groups like you, our work would not be as possible. And on October 8th, the Supreme Court's going to be hearing another case, which you guys heard about yesterday, Vanderstock, a case that the Second Amendment Foundation intervened in, and it's going to be our second time in front of the Supreme Court, this time over the ATF's redefinition of frame and receiver and what constitutes a firearm. We also have 2 more cert petitions pending before the Supreme Court right now. One, a challenge to Maryland's assault weapons ban, an issue that the court desperately needs to tackle, as millions of our fellow citizens across the country are unable to own common arms in common use for lawful purposes, particularly self-defense. And we have another cert petition before the Supreme Court that stems out of the Third Circuit and the decision that deals with Delaware's assault weapons ban in magazines as it relates to preliminary injunctions. Currently, there's a circuit split where the 7th and the 9th Circuit have said that a violation of the Second Amendment does constitute irreparable harm. But for whatever reason, the 3rd Circuit said, not here. This is also why you never use sheets of paper for speaking. With that, the future's bright here at the Second Amendment Foundation. Since I've joined the team, I've been actively recruiting talent to continue to build a powerhouse organization that will further the Second Amendment in all areas of the country. And we look forward to doing so with all of you. We're currently working on more educational programs, which we'll be announcing in the near future, designed to help people learn more about the Second Amendment so that they too may become Second Amendment advocates, or at the very least, understand the truth about the Second Amendment. It really is an honor and a privilege to be in a position to lead this organization into the future, and I want to thank all of you. You're all a key part of the education, empowerment, and defense of the Second Amendment. So give yourselves a round of applause. It's my sincere hope that this weekend you found the information presented at this conference useful. I want to thank all of the speakers for taking the time out of their schedules to come, prepare their presentations, and hopefully empower all of you to make a difference in your community. So thank you all for coming to the 39th Annual Gun Rights Policy Conference and making it a success, and we look forward to seeing you all next year.